Chapter 1805. The Divine Lord has been born. The ceremony has officially begun. Mrs. Shisha, the ancestral patriarch who had come all the way from the Awakens constellation, was in charge of hosting the ceremony. Then many disciples of the Tianqing school went up and bowed. Then the heroes of the new heavenly courts followed. In the end, even the grand cultivators from the star ocean from other planets knelt. How many years has it been? 100,000 years have passed since the Shang Emperor, Ao Emperor and the other ancient sages died, and we went to the Southgate planet region. Even the deity ground and earth have never enjoyed such glory. Finally, the Divine Lord of the Star Ocean is born. The humiliation of being enslaved, suppressed, and sealed for 10,000 years will be washed away today. Yin Zhongzi Niu Duotian, the Green Dragon King and Tu Fei were so excited that tears ran down their cheeks. The eyes of Bai Muxue, Ao Jiao, Long Xingnan, Qi Liqui, and the other ladies had also turned red. Meanwhile, Fu Heishui scanned his surroundings with a wry expression. Big brother, I've looked around. None of the tribes that have come to pay their respects have the divine bat bloodline. Brother, this is the third time I've checked. None of them. Fu Huiran also looked sad. Are we going to be alone for the rest of our lives? The two of them looked at each other and burst into tears. Soul Formation Grand Cultivators of the new heavenly courts, please stand on my right. Jiang Tian smiled and extended his right hand, asking Yin Zhongzi and the others to stand on the same level as him and accept the ceremony. The cultivators from other planets in the hall were shocked, but they couldn't say anything. That was the glory they deserved. They had followed Jiang Tian to the ruins of deity and gone through countless difficulties. Besides, they had indeed become soul formation cultivators and could be called divine lords. Therefore, under the gazes of the crowd, Yin Zhongzi, Niu Duotian, Tu Fei, and the other bandits tidied up their clothes. Fu Heishui wiped their tears and walked onto the high platform excitedly. Together with Jiang Tian and his wife, they accepted the worship of the crowd. Jiang Tian alone was able to defeat the Northern Dipper heavenly talents and kill 4 half-saints in a row. Not to mention that he had the support of many soul formation stage cultivators in the new heavenly court. Especially when Jiang Tian was still so young. He was only in his 30s. If he could reach the soul formation level, he would be able to live for another 100,000 years. Many extraterrestrial mighty figures came to a realization. They, their sons, grandsons, and even their descendants would have to live under the rule of Jiang Tian, the Tianqing school, and the new heavenly court for countless years to come. Don't mess with him, don't mess with him. He didn't expect the ancient heavenly court to have so many semi-god realm warriors. There are 7 or 8 of them. Moreover, they all have demonic beast bloodlines, and they are even very close to divine beasts. Their deities are extremely vast, and they can trigger the great Tao of natural laws. I didn't expect this small deity ground to be a place of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. The divine lords of the Awakens constellation, the Fomalhaut planet region, and the ancient rock planet glanced at the soul formation grand cultivators of the new heavenly courts and exclaimed with fear in their eyes. Some nascent soul cultivators were even trembling in fear. At the last moment, when he was about to be crowned as a divine lord, Ancestral Patriarch, Shisha also glanced at the crowd according to the ceremony in the Star Ocean and asked with a smile, "Does anyone have any objections to Cultivator Tai Chu being crowned as a divine lord?" She had thought it was just a matter of procedure. Yin Zhongzi, Niu Duotian, and the 100 soul formation cultivators in the hall all thought so. After all, Jiang Tian's name had shaken the entire Starry Ocean. His influence had already been established, and his might had suppressed the major galaxies. Who would be so blind as to court death and provoke Jiang Tian? Everyone went silent. However, then, Kong Teichu, your wife is quite talented. This old man wants to take her away. A lazy and casual voice sounded from the entrance of the hall, causing everyone to be shocked. Who is he? Is he crazy? Today is the Divine Lord of the Tai Chu Divine Lord's Divine Lord Coronation Hall. But he wants to take the Divine Lord's wife away. Does he want to die? A cultivator mumbled with a sneer. He's not only provoking Tai Chu Divine Lord, he's also provoking everyone here. Everyone looked up angrily and saw a middle-aged man in an azure outfit approaching with his hands behind his back. That man had gray hair and only a few wrinkles on his handsome face. He seemed to be in his early 40s. However, his eyes were incomparably old. They carried the boundless vicissitudes of time and contained boundless wisdom and philosophy. He simply stood there without using any magic, but he floated in the air. It was as if he was supposed to be standing in the sky. This was the natural order of things. Zhao Xueqing's clone looked at Jiang Tian in confusion and said with her immortal will, "Is he the immortal emperor?" Jiang Tian looked calm. He patted her hand and said, "It's okay." The immortal emperor stared at Zhao Xueqing with greed in his eyes. He clapped his hands and exclaimed, "Good, good, good. You've formed the deity body of the pure Phoenix Lady. You're already a deity-grade soul formation cultivator. Who is he? How dare he look at the wife of Taichu Divine Lord? Do he want to die?" Shi Yingning slammed the table and said angrily. Ancestral Patriarch Shisha immediately stopped her and said, "He's at least a soul formation cultivator, or even higher. Don't be rash." Higher than a soul formation cultivator? Who is he? Shi Yingning felt a chill and was confused. He knew almost all the soul formation ancestral patriarchs in the Tiannan planet region. Even though he hadn't seen them in person, he had seen their portraits and descriptions in the records of his sect. But it was the first time he had seen this middle-aged man in an azure outfit. Jiang Tian glanced at everyone and said with his immortal will, "This man is powerful. Don't act rashly." Great Ancestor Shisha stepped forward and bowed. She was not arrogant at all, and was very humble. "May I know Senior's name and which sect you are from? Are you also here to attend the ceremony of Taichu Divine Emperor?" "I'm the host of this grand hall, Shisha from Awakens constellation. Please take a seat." The immortal monarch didn't say a word. He just looked at Zhao Xueqing, as if he were admiring the best art in the world. Divine Lord Ceremony? The immortal emperor's lightning-like eyes fell on Jiang Tian, revealing a hint of playfulness as he sighed. "It's strange. He's a divine body, divine soul, and divine law, but he's so natural, as if he's the child of an immortal. I'm amazed. He's only a nascent soul cultivator. In terms of fighting capability, I'm afraid he can easily escape from the ice hornless worm. At least, he has the ability to protect his life." Some nascent soul cultivators and normal soul formation cultivators didn't know what was going on. But ancestral patriarchs like Shisha were startled after hearing that. This man called the ancestral patriarch of the Beihan sect, the Ice Dragon ancestral patriarch of the Kaiyang galaxy, and the entire Beidou star system, a small worm. But the third ancestral patriarch of the ancient rock planet didn't buy it. He flew out and yelled, "My friend, if you're here to attend the ceremony, please take a seat immediately. If you don't agree, draw a line. I'm not talented, but I'd like to see what you're capable of." Jiang Tian frowned when he saw this. He hurriedly said, "Senior, please be lenient." Sure enough, the immortal emperor frowned slightly and snorted softly. With a loud bang, the third ancestral patriarch of the ancient rock planet, a peerless overlord who had been a soul formation cultivator for at least 30,000 years, exploded and turned into dust. "Third brother." The other two ancestral patriarchs of the ancient rock planet yelled. They were furious, but more than that, they were terrified. The immortal monarch didn't even move. He was suppressing and killing a god instantly. He was so powerful that they couldn't believe it. He killed a soul formation cultivator as if he were killing ants. How can there be such a powerful person in the world? I'm afraid that even 100 Kong Teichu wouldn't be able to defeat him. Is he a giant in the central galaxy or a deity in heaven? Not only them. Even Shisha and Saint Ampo were terrified. They couldn't help but think of something terrifying, and they felt the power as heavy as a planet. Chapter 1806. The third ancestral patriarch of the ancient rock planet was also a veteran soul formation cultivator. He was not far from becoming a half-saint, and was a terrifying existence that could intimidate an entire planet. However, he could not even withstand a flick of the finger in front of this mysterious person. This person's strength was unimaginable. The strength of these people was about the same as the third ancestral patriarch of the ancient rock planet. If they faced the immortal monarch head-on, they would die without a doubt. Senior, you have a good eye for seeing my aptitude. Jiang Tian could only sigh softly. He narrowed his eyes and said calmly, but it shouldn't be. The cultivation method of the acquired divine body and divine infant is a secret of the nine heavens deity realm, and even the divinity realm. You came from a remote planet. How can you control it? Could it be that she has awakened? The immortal monarch was surprised. Master, we meet again. You really don't recognize me? Jiang Tian smiled faintly. Master? The immortal monarch trembled. After all, he was a giant of the nine heavens deity realm. When he was shocked, the great path around him roared as if the whole world was about to collapse. Jiang Tian smiled leisurely. I am a reincarnated person. In my previous life, you were my master. I once ascended to the nine heavens deity realm, and even swept through the divinity realm, and reached the supreme divine realm of Hongmeng. This old man has seen far too many instances of possession, but I have never heard of such a thing as reversing time and reincarnating. The immortal monarch could not believe it. One had to know that this was the most heaven-defying thing in the world. Even the Daoyuo Dao ancestor could not do it. Even the immortal monarch had no clue at this moment. Let me see your divine sense memory. The immortal monarch pondered for a while. Suddenly he raised his eyebrows and said, Senior, since you want to see it, I will let you see it. Wouldn't that be too embarrassing for Kong Teichu? Jiang Tian's eyes turned cold like a gust of cold wind that froze the world. If Jiang Tian had met the immortal monarch in his previous life, he would not have been able to resist at all. However, as the reincarnation of the god of creation of Hongmeng, even the immortal emperor was not qualified to teach him a lesson. After all, Jiang Tian had already surpassed the giants of the celestial world, and reached the god of creation stage in his past life. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was surprised and nervous. Prepare for battle, Yin Zhongzi roared anxiously. Immediately, the cultivators of the new heavenly court and the heavenly clear sect were on high alert. Their killing intent and battle intent soared into the heavens. They naturally knew that the immortal emperor was very strong, but they were even more loyal to Jiang Tian. How could they sit by and watch their master be humiliated? That's right. In the world of cultivation, having one's soul searched and memories searched was a great humiliation. Moreover, it involved the secrets of Jiang Tian's past life. It was a matter of great importance. Kong Teichu, your face is worthless. The immortal emperor narrowed his eyes, and a murderous light flashed in his eyes. He laughed, took a step forward, and waved his sleeve. A thunder dragon shining with the light of the great path flew out from the bottom of his sleeve. With a loud bang, it turned into a 10-foot long and shot toward Jiang Tian with a terrifying power that could destroy everything. At this time, the thunder dragon that the immortal emperor had released was not very big. It was even far inferior to the law attacks released by Han Ming and the other geniuses. However, everyone's expression changed drastically, and they felt a sense of suffocation. Everyone was keenly aware that the attack of the thunder dragon was far beyond a sage's level. It had reached a level that they could not imagine. The terrifying thunder was extremely condensed and almost tangible. It was completely condensed by the great path of the divine thunder of the nine heavens, like a divine dragon. The immortal emperor did not pry into Jiang Tian's divine sense. Instead, he released a thunder technique, and it was his divine sense that shocked the celestial world. Nine heavens demon destroying true thunder. Senior, watch out. Yin Zhongzi roared again with his divine sense. The new divine generals of the celestial court were so anxious that their eyes were about to crack, and they gritted their teeth. It was a very strange feeling. They were only 100 meters away from the immortal emperor, but this short distance seemed to stretch across the galaxy, and they could not break through. The space around him was completely frozen, like a fly in amber. He couldn't lift his feet, couldn't move his shoulders, and couldn't even move his fingers. The divine sense that the immortal emperor had released froze the space. It was even more powerful than Jiang Tian's sea-calming ice god. They could only watch the nine heavens demon destroying true thunder strike toward Jiang Tian. In fact, This was also the difference between the giants of the celestial world and the human world. The mighty figures of the human world pursued the vastness and surging of cultivation methods. They wanted to be able to stand upright and pick the stars and the moon with their every move. On the other hand, the celestial world of the 9 heavens had already broken through this realm. They did not want to be vast and luxurious, but pure and condensed. A grain of sand could fill the sea of stars, and a blade of grass could cut the sun, the moon, and the stars. They could turn the world upside down as if a flower was a world, and a blade of grass was a Bodhi. If you really turn around, you should know how to restrain the 9 heavenly thunder. You can definitely protect yourself with your current level of cultivation. If you dare to lie to me, then die. After releasing the thunder art, the immortal emperor stood with his hands behind his back. His face was so calm that there was not a trace of emotion on his face. His eyes were deep and ancient, as if they were the eternal Tao of heaven and earth. Demon-destroying true thunder. Those thunderbolts didn't come from this world, but from the deity realm in 9 heavens. They were extremely powerful and could kill a soul formation cultivator, or severely injure a half-saint. Even a Tao reunion perfected immortal would have to be cautious when facing them. The disciples of the Hongyu celestial sect had been almost invincible in the central galaxy with this divine sense passed down by the immortal emperor. Countless enemies of the evil sects had been turned into ashes by this attack. Oh my god, this guy is too scary. Even the purple gold true dragon, a purebred divine beast, was trembling in fear. But this time, the Black Jade Kylan did not mock him for being a coward. Why? Because they realized that the true thunder had taken the shape of a dragon, not because of the immortal emperor, but because there was a true dragon's soul living in it. It was like the array spirit of a large array or the artifact spirit of a divine weapon. Its original body had been killed by the immortal emperor, its flesh and blood had been crushed, and its divine soul had been forcibly suppressed and refined into the divine sense's divine sense. Killing a divine beast, extracting its divine soul, forcibly refining and suppressing it, and then turning it into its own attack. What a terrifying method! It could be said that this true dragon's soul was more terrifying than an ordinary saint's, which was also the most terrifying part of the 9 heavens demon destroying true thunder. The Hongyu celestial sect has many cultivation arts, which are as vast as the sea. They are all very knowledgeable, and have the wonders of creation. With the strength of a soul formation cultivator, there are more than 10 cultivation arts that can restrain the 9 heavens true thunder. Jiang Tian's face was still calm. He stood there with his hands behind his back and didn't dodge. The terrifying true lightning dragon was right in front of him. All of a sudden, a huge black hole split open. Starlight filled the surroundings, forming a spirit formation gate. Amidst the true lightning dragon's earth-shattering roar, the spirit formation gate swallowed up the dragon's head in an instant, leaving only the dragon's body behind. Hongyu celestial sect, great chaos art. Jiang Tian's eyes were cold as he shouted. Huh. The immortal emperor's face changed. He was already somewhat convinced that Jiang Tian had reincarnated and reversed time. Chapter 1807. The Hongyu celestial sect was focused on the 2 most powerful great Taos, the supreme secrets of time and space. The great chaos art was one of the Hongyu celestial sect's secrets about space. It was a void return cultivation art that could surpass reality with the void. No matter how powerful the Dharma divine power was, even if it could destroy the world, the Hongyu celestial sect only needed to create a universe chaos hole to connect different dimensions and transfer the attack to another dimension. Even if that world collapsed, it would have nothing to do with the Hongyu celestial sect. He was also safe and sound, without a single injury. In fact, the eternal exile Jiang Tian used when he fought with Zeus for the deity blood arrow orchid in the Sidoni longevity tribe was a simplified version of the great chaos art. At that time, Jiang Tian was only at the peak of qi refinement. Even if it was just a simplified version, he would still be exhausted and spit out blood. But now he was 10,000 times stronger than before. Even if he used the real universe chaos hole, it was still as easy as pie. But the immortal emperor knew. Even in the central galaxy and the Hongyu celestial sect, this set of divine powers was a top-notch technique that was not passed down to outsiders. Only the 6 personal disciples had a grasp of it. It was impossible for it to be passed down to a remote planet like the Milky Way. The immortal emperor was about to take back the Thunder Dragon. "Master, if you don't believe me, why don't you let me use it to practice?" Unexpectedly, Jiang Tian wasn't done yet. He shouted and attacked for the first time. He pressed his hand down as if it was light. 5 elements immortal sect, 5 elements furnace. The universe chaos whole disappeared. As Jiang Tian pressed his hand down, the 5 elements divine laws of metal, wood, water, fire and earth vibrated and swept out. They formed an ancient cauldron that was more than 10 meters tall. This cauldron had Gungjin as its barrier, green wood as its firewood, and true fire as it burned, turning the ashes into soil. The surrounding clouds were steaming and rosy, and the forces of yin, yang, and 5 elements were transforming each other. A few types of divine laws formed a subtle cycle that grew and multiplied endlessly, as if it was a world of flames that could smelt all things. As soon as the cauldron appeared, it caught the true Thunder Dragon as if it was trying to catch the moon in the water. Bang! Bang! Muffled sounds of struggles and collisions could be heard. The 9 heavens' true lightning was originally extremely young, firm, indestructible, ferocious, and violent. However, under the burning of the grand Tao furnace of the 5 elements, it still shattered miserably, and it blasted the barrier to the point it trembled, and seemed as if it was about to explode. However, it stabilized in the end. Interesting. The immortal emperor narrowed his eyes slightly, his immortal light flickering. In fact, the starry sky great chaotic whole art still had some power left. Not only had Jiang Tian mastered the techniques of the Hengyu immortal sect, but he had also mastered the ultimate techniques of the 5 elements immortal sect. Although he had forcefully simulated it, that was because he had not yet grasped the great Tao. However, in terms of the principles of the cultivation method, he was completely at a loss. If Jiang Tian had really been his disciple in his past life, it would mean that he had not only mastered the Hengyu immortal sect's ultimate technique, but he had also dabbled in the techniques of other immortal sects. At this time, a large part of the true Thunder Dragon had been burned away, leaving only its tail that was constantly slapping the outer wall of the cauldron, making loud rumbling noises. Its hind claws grabbed the edge of the cauldron, making ear-piercing clanging sounds. Sparks flew everywhere, as if it was trying to break free. Its terrifying vitality, which was almost indestructible, also shocked everyone. Slaying immortal sect, heaven interception and god trapping. Jiang Tian's expression did not change. He made a second move, his right hand forming a claw, from top to bottom, and grabbed down. Clang! The 5 elements' great Tao furnace shrank and returned to nothingness. The latter half of the true Thunder Dragon's tail was about to fly into the air. It was as if an invisible giant net of laws had been cast down. Streaks of divine laws, which were full of terrifying murderous intent, seemed to be able to destroy Buddhas, slay demons, trap true gods, and cut across all things in the world, intertwined with each other and directly bound the true Thunder Dragon's tail tightly, and it kept shrinking. Suddenly, a clanging sound of friction rang out. Blood-containing thunder splashed, scales fell off, and the Thunder Dragon's bones broke inch by inch. In the end, it exploded with a bang like a piece of paper. At this point, the demon-slaying true Thunder Dragon had been completely crushed by Jiang Tian. The secret arts of the 3 celestial sects, the most powerful divine powers in the universe, were used one after another by Jiang Tian. The whole place was silent. Everyone was dumbfounded. Even ancestral patriarch Shisha and Saint Ampo looked as if it was the first time they had seen Jiang Tian. They had already guessed that the immortal monarch definitely had an extraordinary background. With their means, they did not even have the eyesight and knowledge to understand the true thunder of the deity realm of the immortal world, let alone dodge or break it. In a word, if they faced the true thunder of the 9th heaven, there was no other way but to die. However, such a terrifying divine thunder of the 9th heaven was still destroyed by Jiang Tian in 3 fancy ways. This feeling was like seeing a 3-year-old child on Earth solve Goldbach's conjecture, with 3 different ideas. It was unbelievable, as if it was a fantasy story. There shouldn't be such a person in the world. The immortal monarch's face, which had been as calm as an ancient well, became serious for the first time. He moved his throat and murmured vaguely, 10,000 Dao Immortal Sect, 10,000 Dao Unification. Jiang Tian's eyes were full of confidence, and even a trace of contempt. He raised his hands and gently closed them, as if he was hugging the void. Suddenly, a singularity seemed to form between his fingers and palms. An absolute negative vacuum. The scattered fragments of the true thunder great path in the air flew into it like bright meteors. Endless energy at the extreme was compressed into a point that seemed to be extremely nothingness, but also extremely heavy. At this point, yin and yang were indistinguishable. All things returned to the origin, the initial singularity. The small singularity contained a terrible explosive power, as if it could instantly turn into chaos, create all things, and blow up the entire Milky Way. In fact, Jiang Tian's idea of creating the chaotic divine body was based on the 10,000 Dao unification, of the 10,000 Dao immortal sect, and all the cultivation theories of the 9 major celestial sects. Returning to the origin was to absorb and devour, while chaos was to release and expand. Between tension and relaxation, it was like a simulation of the Big Bang, forming an attack, showing the power of the primordial demon god when he created the world. Teacher, thank you for meeting me again. Give me a big gift. Jiang Tian chuckled. He swallowed the true thunder of the 9th heaven and integrated it into the divine nascent soul. Suddenly, the thunder divine law seemed to be several times more condensed than before. It was dazzling and blazing, far more than the other divine laws. It seemed to be showing signs of perfection. Yes. Many of the most powerful cultivation methods of the celestial sects have been mastered through a comprehensive study. It's pure and natural, and it's unique. It's shining with 10 times or 100 times the combat power of a single cultivation method. Wonderful, wonderful. The immortal emperor praised, but a mischievous smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He said softly, "That's right." He whispered, "But it's not over yet." It's not over yet? Everyone was shocked and couldn't believe it. The true thunder of the 9th heaven had been destroyed and swallowed by Jiang Tian. Why was it not over yet? And look at his smug expression. It seemed that the next attack was the most terrifying. Chapter 1808. Bastard, you actually dared to destroy my true lightning body. I'll cut you into pieces. At this time, with a loud roar that shook the sky, a terrifying true dragon divine soul that was about 1,000 feet long suddenly appeared out of thin air. On the dragon's head, there was also a ferocious and resentful expression that looked like a human. Extremely terrifying. Once the true dragon divine soul appeared, everyone felt as if they were facing an ancient deity. It was so powerful, and its energy was much more powerful than that of a saint. It was like a god had risen, and it shook the entire starry sky. Its might shook the laws and grand Daos, and it seemed to be able to devour the myriad of worlds, and make the myriad of people kneel on the ground. So terrifying. Is that the true dragon soul? Even the heavenly generals of the new heavenly courts, ancestral patriarch Shisha, Saint Anpo and many other grand cultivators from the star ocean felt their divine souls and minds being suppressed. For example, Fu Heishui, Tu Fei and the others fell to their knees. They couldn't control themselves at all. The human world, the deity realm and the divine realm. Those were 3 completely different dimensions. Strictly speaking, they were 3 levels of energy. From low to high, the most powerful laws of the divine realm could kill normal nascent soul cultivators, and easily crush sacred laws and deity laws, not to mention the most ordinary dharma laws. So, even a normal rabbit born in the divine realm could have the power of a soul formation grand cultivator. True dragons were divine beasts, the most powerful creatures in the divine realm. They rarely appeared in the deity realm and the human world. An adult divine beast could even fight with the giants of the deity realm, and suppress the void return saints and Tao reunion perfected immortals in the central galaxy, not to mention the grand cultivators on the remote planets. Especially Tu Fei, Heishui Fu, Yin Zhongzi and the others, who originally had the bloodlines of tiger beasts, divine bats and cranes. The true dragon was the most powerful creature in the universe. In the ancient times, it had once swept across the universe and devoured the universe. Their ancestors had been slaughtered and their blood had dyed the starry sky red. So, that fear had been rooted in their blood, and came from the depths of their souls. They couldn't resist it at all. The true dragon's body had already been destroyed, and only its divine spirit was left. However, even its divine spirit was extremely terrifying. Its soul power was far more powerful than that of a void return saint, and was comparable to a Tao reunion perfected immortal. How could they not be afraid? Even Zhao Xueqing's clone, who was at the deity level of the soul formation stage, felt that her divine soul was being suppressed. She was trembling in fear. Teacher, this is the divine soul of a true dragon. If I destroy it, you won't be able to find another one. Jiang Tian's face was extremely calm. He looked at the immortal emperor with a faint smile. That's fine. Give it a try. The undying emperor said calmly. The soul of the true dragon roared angrily. Ignorant brat, how dare you speak such arrogant words? You want to kill me? I'm the soul of the true dragon of the god realm, and I've even killed Tao integration immortals. What's more, you're just a kid. Die. Then it rushed towards Jiang Tian like a bolt of lightning and opened its mouth, trying to swallow Jiang Tian's divine soul. At this moment, everyone felt as if their souls had left their bodies. Even nascent souls and gods, as long as they had fused with their spiritual power, would fly out of their bodies and become food for the true dragon's divine soul. Alas! Alas! Let's try using the art of the god realm. Jiang Tian heaved a sigh. He gently cast a spell and pointed his finger. A beam of light, which was dark and bright, was immediately shot out. It was mixed with countless true thunderbolts that could destroy everything. It was full of chaos and vitality, but also carried a domineering power that could destroy divine souls. Hongming's god-killing finger. That was a cultivation art that could only be mastered after reaching the god realm. It was no longer a cultivation art of the deity realm. It was supreme and powerful, capable of destroying all divine souls and soul energy. Jiang Tian was barely able to use it with his divine-grade nascent soul cultivator, but it was like a 3-year-old picking up a machine gun and shooting randomly. He could still kill a tiger. Rumble. At that moment, this ray of light annihilated space and even stopped time. Countless mysterious runes were engraved on its surface, revolving around it. Dazzling azure divine lightning appeared out of nowhere, gently striking the true dragon's divine soul like the finger of an ancient god. You want to kill me with this? The true dragon's divine soul sneered. He was in the state of a divine soul at the moment, and his dharma power was vast. He could gather the spirit chi of heaven and earth and form an avatar at any time. Even if one avatar was killed, there would be thousands of more. But in the next moment, the light of chaos and lightning intertwined, like gangrene, instantly spread through an undetectable passage to the thousands of avatars of the true dragon's divine soul. The next moment, the foreheads of countless true dragon's divine soul avatars were crushed at the same time. Then, they immediately disappeared and died together. Hongming's god-killing finger specialized in destroying divine souls. Even if they were thousands of miles away and the galaxy was in their way, they would still be able to chase after them. If the true dragon's divine soul hadn't used the most overbearing 9 twists of the true dragon to escape to the edge of the solar system and destroy the last connection, his last avatar and divine soul would have died at the same time. Even so, the true dragon's divine soul was severely injured. It flickered between light and darkness, as if it were about to collapse. Master, this kid is using a cultivation art from the divine realm. His eyes were full of fear, and he shouted in panic. His voice shook the world and he trembled. He wanted to turn around and run away. He didn't dare to go forward anymore. It's indeed a cultivation art from the divine realm. It has a hint of the grand Tao that can split the world and give birth to everything. Crack. Seeing this, the immortal monarch was so shocked that he took a step back. If this scene were to spread to the central galaxy or even the 9 heavens deity realm, it would cause a huge uproar and shock the entire galaxy. The immortal monarch, a giant in the deity realm, saw stars as small as bullets, cross galaxies like a trickle of water, smash stars with one palm, crush sages like ants, and defeated perfected immortals like chickens. Such a mighty figure was actually scared by an Earth cultivator in the middle of nowhere Milky Way. This was even more shocking than someone going through a tribulation and becoming an immortal. It could be said that this was something that had never happened in millions of years. But in fact, from the perspective of the immortal monarch, this reaction was not strange at all. The current Jiang Tian carried the memory and experience of his previous life when he dominated the human world, the deity realm, and the divine realm. That was unimaginable wealth and power. It was just like how a millionaire could not underestimate the son of a billionaire, who had the right to inherit billions of assets. Although the current Jiang Tian was weak, his knowledge and divine sense were unfathomable. Even if the immortal monarch was 100 or 1,000 times stronger than him, Jiang Tian, with the experience of his previous life, especially in the divine realm, had the advantage of foresight and foresight. It was not impossible for the weak to defeat the strong. Master, do you believe it now? Jiang Tian swung his sleeves and stood with his hands behind his back. His face was cold and indifferent. Even in the face of the immortal monarch, he was not weaker. I believe it. The immortal monarch frowned and finally nodded. Although he had 1,000 questions about the reason for Jiang Tian's reincarnation and rebirth, he had to believe it when the facts were right in front of him. Master, may I know why you came to Earth? Jiang Tian nodded slightly and asked knowingly. The immortal monarch no longer had his original arrogance and indifference. Instead, he smiled warmly and said, Shui Qingxue is very beautiful. She has the rare immortal body of the pure phoenix. This old man wants to bring Shui Qingxue to the Hengyu celestial sect and accept her as my disciple. With your help, she is already a deity-level divine transformation realm cultivator. Her foundation is very solid. In the future, she may be able to become an immortal and step into the deity realm. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed again. Chapter 1809. Take Fairy Xueqing away? She has a chance to become a deity. The deity realm of the 9 heavens. This is a great opportunity. Yeah, an opportunity to become a deity is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So the so-called opportunity to become a deity on Earth isn't referring to the spirit chi or the universe treasures. But now, everyone's expressions were different, and their reactions were also different. For a time, they were all using their divine senses to discuss and exchange their opinions. The existence of the deity realm of the 9 heavens was indeed a fact for Jiang Tian. However, it was only a legend for the grand cultivators in a remote planet region like the Milky Way. No one had ever become a deity in history, and they couldn't even confirm the existence of the deity realm of the 9 heavens. However, after hearing the conversation between Jiang Tian and the immortal monarch, they were certain that the deity realm of the 9 heavens existed. The immortal monarch was able to kill a true dragon, extract its soul, and summon the 9 heavenly thunder. What else could he be if not a real deity? Congratulations, Fairy Xueqing. Congratulations, Taichu Divine Lord. You've met your master and have a chance to become a deity. You'll be able to live forever and live as long as the world. Old ancestor Shisha bowed towards Jiang Tian and his wife. As she spoke, her deep demonic vertical pupils also revealed a deep envy and a burning passion. Bai Jianjin, the deity-grade nascent soul of the Beidou sect, was taken away by a grand cultivator from the central galaxy. Her master wasn't even a grand cultivator from the 9 celestial sects, but only a grand cultivator from a sacred ground. Countless grand cultivators in the Little Tiannam planet region were envious. The Star Ocean was shocked when the news was spread. The grand send-off ceremony was also a ceremony where thousands of stars came to pay homage. The mighty figures of the endless sea of stars sent generous gifts as a send-off. As for Bai Jianjin's sect and clan, one of them had ascended to become a Big Dipper powerhouse and was on par with the Ice Drake ancestor, Han Ke. And then, the person who was taking Zhao Xueqing away wasn't a grand cultivator from the central galaxy, but a powerhouse from the deity realm. The opportunity and benefits involved were 1,000 times better than what Bai Jianjin had encountered. Jiang Tian's expression was neither sad nor happy, and there was no change at all. However, he had already confirmed the guess he had for a long time. Sure enough, when the immortal emperor came to Earth in his previous life, he didn't want to take him away, But Zhao Xueqing shook her head and refused. Senior Dizun, my husband, daughter, and relatives are here. This is my homeland. I want to protect this place. Idiot. Seeing this scene, the immortal emperor revealed a somewhat benevolent expression. He shook his head and sighed. You are at the deity-level divinity transformation stage, and your husband, Kong Teichu, is at the divine-level nascent soul stage. Although the spirit qi in this place has recovered, it can only support you to this realm. It will be difficult for you to advance even an inch in thousands of years. He immediately used his divine sense to transmit the scene of him exterminating Big Dipper to everyone. I've already exterminated the Big Dipper galaxy. From now on, I will protect the solar system. No one will dare to offend and trample on it anymore. This can be considered as resolving your worries. Everyone's consciousness immediately saw the images of the 7 stars of the Big Dipper being destroyed. All of them were so shocked that their souls almost left their bodies. Oh God! No wonder he dared to ignore Han Ke, the ancestral patriarch of the ice dragons. He really did exterminate them. This must be the doing of a giant from the deity realm. He destroyed a star and spread fire across the entire galaxy. If he isn't a giant from the deity realm, what is? That's right. Such power is definitely not something I can imagine. So, the legends about becoming a deity and the deity realm are all true. I can die without regrets now that I've seen it today. At this moment, everyone no longer had any doubts. Even the last bit of doubt was gone. Some old soul formation stage cultivators who were determined to become deities trembled with tears running down their cheeks. Seeing that Jiang Tian was still expressionless, Saint Ampo persuaded him with a sincere expression. My friend, maybe you'll be separated from Fairy Xueqing for a few hundred years, but the lifespan of a cultivator is different from that of an ordinary person. Compared to your lifespan of thousands of years, it's just a short moment. Don't lose the big picture because of love. He spoke from the bottom of his heart. If Zhao Xueqing had the immortal monarch as her backer, she would be extremely powerful and famous across the galaxy. She was already talented and had an extraordinary deity bone. If she had the immortal monarch, who had already ascended to the deity realm, as her master, she would have a high chance of becoming a deity. Not only would Jiang Tian and his wife benefit greatly, but the entire planet region would also be completely safe. There would be no more chaos, no more wars, and no more deaths. The entire mini-southern sky star region would end its state of war, and form a united star region with Earth and the solar system as the core. But then everyone in the new heavenly court and Tianqing school suddenly felt something was wrong. Why didn't Jiang Tian say anything? Dignity. Right. Ever since Jiang Tian rose, he had always been unafraid of the changes in the world and his ancestors. He could only be himself and disrespected the deities in the world. Since when was his destiny controlled by someone else? They used to be a family, but you took them away just like that. What a joke. HM? Is Taichu going to refuse? If he doesn't, the entire planet will be destroyed once he starts a war with the immortal monarch. Ancestral Patriarch Shisha and Saint Ampo's expressions changed drastically. They became nervous and wanted to run away. Sure enough, Jiang Tian said with a half-smile. Senior, are you sure you want to take my wife away? Although Zhao Xueqing was also trembling, she still held Jiang Tian's hand tightly and said, Senior, how can you take someone as your disciple by force? If you force our family to be separated from the galaxy forever, I won't do it even if I have to self-destruct. I'm not taking her away. She doesn't belong here in the first place. The immortal emperor sighed meaningfully and shook his head. Then he said seriously, you've protected Xueqing to an unprecedented level with your experience in your past life. I have to repay your kindness. Why don't I take you as my last disciple and teach you cultivation arts? You'll be another pillar of the central galaxy in the future. Take me as your disciple? Hongming's god-killing finger. Do you know that? Jiang Tian smiled disdainfully, but there was a murderous look in his eyes. He had lived 2 lives, and in his previous life, he had cultivated hard for 10,000 years before finally ascending to the position of Hongming god. He had gone further than the undying monarch. and his knowledge was broader and deeper than his achievements. Putting aside his cultivation, he had mastered more cultivation arts and divine powers than the immortal monarch. After his rebirth, he had the advantage of foresight. He knew about the deity materials that were about to appear in the central galaxy, the rising deities and even the deity emperors in the human world, and many dirty secrets of the deity realm. This was not something the immortal monarch could compare with. Kung Techu, don't be ignorant. The immortal monarch's face froze. He then flicked his sleeves and said, a divine-grade nascent soul is indeed impressive, but I've also killed a lot of nascent soul cultivators and true gods from the deity realm. How terrifying was the anger of the deity realm. Countless Dharma laws collapsed in the sky and grand Daos were annihilated. There were black holes, as if the world were about to be destroyed. Many of the soul formation and half-saints present were suppressed to the point that they couldn't even breathe. He's going to rob us? Isn't he a giant of the deity realm? How can you be so unreasonable? Tang Linglong, Sasaki Haisha, Bai Muxiue, Long Xingnan, and the other disciples were dumbfounded. Was this the cruel truth of the entire universe? Even if one became a deity, the bigger fist was still the law. Chapter 1810. Do you really think you can scare me off with your immortal divine powers? The immortal monarch calmed down and said calmly, I have so many divine powers. I'm just afraid that killing you will affect Xueqing's Taoist heart. That's why I'm being lenient. You should know your place. Senior, if you dare to take me away and separate me from my wife, I'll explode myself. Zhao Xueqing's doppelganger also shouted. Her beautiful eyes were filled with murderous intent and endless determination. What a pair of idiots. The immortal monarch's face was filled with anger, as if he was angry at their incompetence and lamented their misfortune. The mortal world, wife, children, and parents are all dreams and illusions. They're just stinky skins. If you have the ability to understand, you should know that the fruit of marriage is nothing in the end. Pink skeletons and handsome skins are all the fetters of the devils. The real immortal cultivators pursue immortality, transcend the world, and live forever. I love these pink skeletons and the fetters of the mortal world. So what? Jiang Tian took a step forward and faced the immortal monarch. He did not show any sign of weakness. We don't want to live forever. We don't ask for an afterlife. We don't care about the past. We only want to live a vigorous life. We don't want to be tied down by you. We don't want to be your pawn. If you control my fate, what's the point of living? You're so stubborn. Don't stop me. I don't mean any harm by taking Fairy Xueqing away. I just want to teach her the great way and bring her to the immortal world. I'll train her with all my heart. The immortal monarch did not wait for Jiang Tian to respond. He grabbed Zhao Xueqing's doppelganger with his palm. Although his palm was ordinary, it filled the world as if it was the hand of an immortal emperor from the 9 heavens. It froze the void within 100 feet of Jiang Tian. Even the primordial qi wind and clouds could not move. It was the power of the immortal world, a supreme forbidden spell. Ancestor Shisha and the others could not even move a finger. They were all shocked. They did not expect such a mighty power to exist in the world. Break. Jiang Tian raised his eyebrows and spat out a word. As soon as this word was spoken, it was instantly like the chaos had exploded, and the universe was born. It was filled with the might to split the heavens and the earth apart and sweep through the myriad of worlds. Roar. Inside the spirit embryo, the divine infant glared at the immortal emperor with eyes full of hatred. It raised its head and roared. Jiang Tian activated the primal chaos creation scripture to the extreme. The power of his divine body, divine infant, and divine rule merged into one. Behind him, 9 phantoms of divine rule soared into the sky and turned into chaotic rays of light that bombarded the immortal emperor. The divine infant was made entirely of gold. It was only about 7 to 8 inches in size, but it had 9 orifices. There were eyes on its forehead and navel, making it look like a divine infant that had descended from the 9 heavens. Clang! Jiang Tian's blow had crushed tens of thousands of Tao and shattered the Dharma. Its vast and surging power was enough to blow up an asteroid, but it only bounced the immortal emperor's giant hand 100 meters high and formed a protective shield that covered the hall with a radius of several hundred meters. He couldn't protect more. Otherwise, the divine rule of the primal chaos wouldn't be condensed enough to withstand the second blow. Within this safe range, ancestral patriarch Shisha, Saint Ampo, and many other grand cultivators from the Star Ocean suddenly found that they could move their hands and feet again. Why are you so stubborn and struggling, my young friend? Everyone below the deities of the 9 heavens is like an ant floating in the clouds. No matter how strong your divine infant is, and how powerful your cultivation is still weak. You can't withstand my second blow. The immortal emperor's expression didn't even change as he spoke casually. But he didn't show any mercy when he attacked. With a backhand slap, it was as if the world had been turned upside down. As the ancient heaven-flipping seal struck, wisps of purple chi suddenly emerged from his body and filled the world. The purple chi of the deity world. It was a kind of spirit chi in the deity world. If used for nourishment, a wisp of it could create a soul formation cultivator. If used for killing, a wisp of it could destroy a star. Purple chi gushed out from the immortal emperor's body like a purple nebula. It was incomparably dazzling, and in the blink of an eye, it merged into his fingers and palms, turning into incomparably condensed crystals. His fingernails shone like purple immortal crystals, and once again he clawed at Yi Qingyu. When he clawed at Chun Fan, terrifying space cracks appeared where his fingers touched. They were extremely deep, like black holes, as if they could even tear the world apart. Kill. Jiang Tian's eyes widened in anger. He roared and patted the sky-devouring demonic gourd at his waist, summoning the myriad stone cauldron. The myriad stone cauldron was filled with chaotic chi, and the primordial aura of everything was flowing. Many grains of galaxy crystal sand on the cauldron sparkled like a star. You can't control my fate. The earthly dragon clone turned into a 10 feet tall man with a dragon head and a human body. He was covered in countless scales, and his eyes were demonic. The dark yellow earth divine law lingered around him. He flashed out from behind Jiang Tian and raised one hand. Then he jumped up like a king carrying a cauldron over his head and smashed at the giant purple chi hand. As for Jiang Tian himself, he maintained the safety shield with a determined look on his face. He looked coldly at the earth-winged dragon, and the immortal monarch soaring into the sky to protect Xiao Shiweqing and his fellow cultivators. Bang! An earth-shattering sound came from 10,000 meters high in the sky. A crack appeared on the undying monarch's massive palm as it was knocked off course again. The Taichu Heavenly Pavilion, on the other hand, was knocked back several thousand meters. The ground trembled as terrifying fissures hundreds of miles long appeared, just like the Grand Canyon of East Africa. The clouds in the sky above Sidoni within a radius of thousands of miles were swept away. Earth, which was dozens of times larger than before, was shaking violently. The Dharma laws and great Taoists that were dozens of times stronger than before couldn't resist and cracked. At this moment, the mountains crumbled and the earth cracked. Towering mountains that were several thousand feet tall were instantly flattened. Terrifying earthquakes, tsunamis, and hurricanes erupted in an instant. Terrifying huge waves that were several thousand meters tall were set off on the surface of the sea. It was as if the sea had dried up and the rocks had crumbled. One after another, the aircraft carriers were overturned like small dinghies. If it wasn't for the mythological alliance reminding all the inhabitants of Earth to hide in bunkers when the undying sovereign arrived, and these bunkers were designed by Zhang Qinzhen, and designed by Jiang Tian, and the Tianqing sect, which had extremely strong defensive capabilities that were comparable to Tao artifacts, millions of people would have died. Clang! The myriad origin cauldron was shaken until it spun around in disarray. Terrifying cracks appeared on its surface. The undying emperor reached out with his big hand and grabbed it in his hand. Bang! The thick earth-winged dragon clone was sent flying 1,000 miles away. The moment it landed, the earth cracked open and spread out in all directions. Intense crashing sounds rang out incessantly. Mountain after mountain collapsed. The thick earth-winged dragon was struck until it was 3,000 miles deep into the ground before coming to a stop. It's seriously injured. The Grand Primordium's cauldron was also taken. Ancestor Shisha was dumbfounded. Although she was suppressed by the immortal monarch's celestial realm purple chi and the great way of law, her vast divine sense vaguely sensed that the thick earth-winged dragon's skin and flesh were torn open. Grand Primordium, don't fight anymore. Your teacher is too powerful and his cultivation arts are too profound. You're no match for him. Ampo Saint tried his best to persuade him. His body trembled, and he was about to cry. It wasn't that he wanted to break down Jiang Tian's will to fight. He truly couldn't understand why Jiang Tian was so stubborn. Why did he refuse? Why did he not hesitate to risk his life to fight? It was clearly an enormous fortuitous encounter, and he should have accepted it readily and been deeply grateful. The heavenly generals of the heavenly court and the disciples of the Tianqing school were speechless and looked extremely serious. Their confidence in Jiang Tian had been shaken. The power of the deity realm in 9 heavens was too terrifying. The distance between Jiang Tian and him was like the difference between a mortal and a cultivator. Return. Jiang Tian's face was as cold as iron, and he didn't say a word. The thick earth-winged dragon stomped its feet and pierced through the vast earth. In the blink of an eye, it arrived behind Jiang Tian. Its eyes were filled with rage, and its battle intent was soaring into the heavens. Its dragon blood was boiling. Chapter 1811. Kong Teichu, you should thank me. I was the one who brought this cauldron of creation to the deity ground and gave it to Emperor Zhongli. Zhao Xueqing also transferred your luck to you, so it fell into your hands. You would have died if it weren't for this treasure. The immortal monarch chuckled and grabbed the immortal will imprint on the cauldron of creation. He then took it into his hand and played with it. You want me to thank you? Jiang Tian snickered and said. You did leave this treasure behind, but you're the one behind the arrival of planet destruction, aren't you? Indeed. The immortal monarch didn't deny it. He nodded and said without changing his expression. But you can't blame me for that. The deity ground and the ancient earth were places I'd carefully cultivated. I sent this cauldron of creation to the deity ground, hoping that the deity ground would stabilize the 3 worlds. Unfortunately, Emperor Zhongli was useless and the Golden Crow ancient emperor was muddle-headed. Because of the conflict between the Westland, the deity ground and planet destruction, as well as the cleansing in the heavenly court, the deity ground was shattered. He belittled himself and attacked the sun, using it as a broadcast to the void returning and Tao reunion civilizations. It attracted the heavenly fiends from the Beidou planet region, which disrupted my plan. I was too disappointed in them, so I could only send a planet destruction from the deity realm to clean them up. He was a very arrogant person. Even Emperor Zhongli and the Golden Crow ancient emperor, who were famous in the star ocean in the deity ground, were like 3-year-old children to him. But nobody thought it was inappropriate, because he was too powerful, much more powerful than the ancient virtuous cultivators of the deity ground. Clean them up? Jiang Tian sneered and said. Do you know how many people died when planet destruction arrived and caused the decline of the heavenly court and the ancient earth? Everything in the world nourishes people, but no one is kind. How can we repay the heavens? So what if I kill them all? The immortal monarch snickered. But you were the one who attracted the annihilators, right? Jiang Tian said in a deep voice. I've been to the Thunderlock realm before, and the ancient celestial court's wandering army had encountered the annihilator. The annihilators were the greatest enemies of the god, immortal, and human realms. Even the supreme demons of the demon realm viewed them as mortal enemies. As a giant of the immortal world, why are you colluding with the annihilator? Besides, Shang Emperor Zhongli and Ao Emperor Wuchang had already started to wander in the deity ground. They didn't care about your planet destruction plan. Why do you have to kill them all? So what if we kill them all? The immortal emperor's face was indifferent and emotionless, just like the great Tao of the heavens. Shang Emperor Zhongli, Ao Huang Wuchang, Golden Crow ancient emperor, and the others are too useless. In fact, they had already reached the void return stage at that time. They could have crossed the star ocean and even entered the central galaxy by themselves. However, they were so attached to the mortal world that they had to create a deity ground to wander around. They pushed the deity ground and the worlds to the Southgate star. You might have already known that the planet destruction plan, didn't only involve the solar system. The South Gate, Ophiuchus, Fomalhaut and other planets were also involved. We hadn't completed our plan back then. There were still some grand cultivators and saints hiding in those planet regions. If they learned about the planet destruction plan from Shang Emperor and the others, they would have understood it in time and escaped through the star ocean. Although I can capture them one by one and throw them back into the cage, it will take a lot of effort. So I might as well give them a galactic anchor, and let them kill Shang Emperor Zhongli, Ao Huang Wuchang and the others. That's good. After 100,000 years, the heavenly South Star area has become a graveyard for immortals and demons. Even the grand cultivators and saints didn't manage to escape. They were nourished by the great Tao and the grand array in the starry sky to nourish Earth. After 100,000 years, the spirit chi of ancient Earth has recovered. There was a lot of information in those few sentences. Everyone's mind almost went blank. They needed to digest it, and couldn't come back to themselves for a long time. The graveyard of deities and demons. The world cage. The universe anchor attracted the annihilators. The grand cultivators turned into the great Tao to nourish Earth. According to legends, the heavenly South Planet region used to be very prosperous and had Tao reunion perfected immortals, even though it wasn't as big as the central galaxy. However, it had gradually declined in the last few 100,000 years. Saints were only legends and half-saints were already at the top. At this moment, only the heavenly generals of the ancient heavenly courts were still on the same side as Jiang Tian. The attitude of many cultivators from other planets suddenly changed. The stars dimmed, the grand cultivators died, the saints turned into Tao and the planet regions withered. And yet, Earth got all the benefits? It made Kong Techu and his wife what they are now. But why? If we have the chance, we should also get a share. We can't let Kong Techu take all the benefits. A seed of resentment was planted in the hearts of Saint Ampo and ancestral patriarch Shisha, which could grow into a towering tree. Jiang Tian also noticed their changes and sneered in his mind. That was how people were. They feared power, but didn't care about virtue. Even old monsters who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years were no exception. In fact, all of this was set up by the immortal Lord and the other giants of the celestial world. What did it have to do with Earth? However, they were afraid of the immortal Lord and didn't dare to offend him. They couldn't wait to worship him. Although Jiang Tian was powerful enough to kill them, they felt that Jiang Tian had a bottom line. Unlike the immortal Lord, who could easily crush stars and destroy planets. So they suddenly had evil thoughts. However, Jiang Tian didn't have time to pay attention to them at the moment. He looked at the immortal Lord and said, "Senior, you've painstakingly turned the heavenly South Planet region into a desolate place. Why? Extinction is for a better longevity. The withered planet regions are for the grand occasion of today's rebirth. Earth is a base that you can't imagine, and that's even more powerful than the gods of Hongmeng. I'm just following orders. I'm just a small screw in the giant wheel of the heavenly path." The immortal Lord sneered and said leisurely, "Kong Techu, you were a Hongmeng god in your previous life, but you don't know the truth of the great way of heaven and earth. Compared with the great way of heaven and earth, the sea of stars is just a drop in the ocean, and civilization is like a passing cloud. You don't know how virtuous my plan is. You're only concerned about the safety of a small corner of the world. You're too short-sighted. Think about it carefully, think about it again, think about it a lot more. You won't stop me from taking your lover away today. There's nothing to think about. You can't take him away." Jiang Tian shook his head gently. His fighting spirit rose steadily and soared to the sky. "Fine. You're an ant trying to shake a tree. You've exhausted my patience. So what if I kill you? I can erase her memory even if her divine sense is severely damaged. She only remembers that I'm her teacher. She doesn't remember that she once had a loving husband." At this moment, the immortal Lord's patience seemed to have been exhausted. He ignored Zhao Xueqing and flicked the giant purple hand toward Jiang Tian. Chapter 1812. It was a light flick, but it felt heavier than a planet. After flicking his finger, the immortal emperor stared at Jiang Tian with eyes as cold as the coldest glaciers in hell without any emotion. In the eyes of the people on earth, the immortal emperor seemed to be above the 9 heavens, stepping on the sun and the moon, like an invincible deity emperor. Jiang Tian, on the other hand, was like Seymour, who had overestimated himself and repeatedly lifted the boulders that the gods had thrown down. He looked heroic, but there was also a trace of helplessness in his actions. It was a tragic scene of life and death. The purple deity Qi of the deity world surged, and instantly shattered Jiang Tian's chaotic shield. "Break!" Jiang Tian roared. He formed a hand seal and gathered all the divine laws in his body between his fingers. Whoosh! It was as if the chaos had been split apart, and yin and yang had been split apart. A chaotic saber light slashed heavily on the finger like a saber cutting through water. Bang! Jiang Tian spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body flew out heavily. Crack! Crack! The crisp sound of bones breaking was heard. Jiang Tian's body was shattered, and even his spirit embryo was broken. The 9 orifices of his divine infant spurted out blood. The attack didn't slow down and penetrated the Taichu Heavenly Pavilion. The Aramba Heavenly Pavilion was torn to pieces. Many cultivators and mortals either transformed into ferocious tigers, flood dragons and flying cranes, or used heaven-defying movement techniques to leap up and down like grasshoppers. They stepped on the wreckage and debris as they fled in all directions. "Husband!" Zhao Xueqing cried with tears in her eyes. She stepped into the air and rushed towards Jiang Tian. "My child, he's fine. He's your husband and he's extremely talented. How can I kill him?" With a seemingly benevolent smile, the immortal emperor waved his purple hand and caught Zhao Xueqing at an incredible speed like a bolt of purple lightning from the immortal realm. Then he said with a smile, "I've restrained the purple aura from the immortal realm. Otherwise, if even a wisp of it leaked out, how could the people in this iron lump survive?" Zhao Xueqing's clone couldn't break free. She ignored him and only looked at Jiang Tian with tears in her eyes. "I'm a divine-grade nascent soul cultivator, like the child of a true god. I won't let you take her away, old man." Jiang Tian's eyes were cold. He stepped into the air and flew hundreds of miles away. Suddenly, he took out the absolute heaven sword and slashed at the immortal emperor. The sword light that was like a torrent was completely condensed from the chaotic divine laws. It was dazzling like a ray of light, and it obliterated the laws and shattered the grand Tao. This is the Taichu's most powerful Dharma treasure, the heaven-severing sword. This may be the last hope for Fairy Xueqing. At this moment, ancestral patriarch Xisha, Saint Ampo and the other cultivators from other planets were shocked and frightened. That sword was too powerful. It seemed to have the power to cut the galaxy and wipe out the universe. They knew that if they faced it, they would have no chance of escaping. Whoosh! The immortal emperor didn't move. But when the sword aura was 100 feet away from him, it suddenly shattered like a piece of glass hitting steel. It was like a cup falling to the ground and exploding. Whoosh! In that instant, countless streaks of sword light shot out in all directions, piercing through layer after layer of space, and turning the area within a radius of several thousand kilometers into a storm of swords. Some cultivators even stood a few thousand miles away, thinking that they were far away from the battlefield and wouldn't be involved. But then, a sword aura flew over and cut his body and golden core into pieces. He was a peak-stage golden core cultivator, but he couldn't even block a broken sword aura. There were more than 10 million of such sword auras. In an instant, dozens of cultivators couldn't dodge in time and died. Seeing this, Zhao Xueqing's face changed. SDTH. At that moment, the smiles of all the cultivators who saw this froze on their faces. Even ancestral patriarch Xisha was frightened and looked desperate. Saint Ampo smiled wryly and shook his head. "No, the gap is too big. He's still a powerhouse of the deity realm. You want to use us as pawns? Even if you don't mean any harm, I, Kong Taichu, won't allow it. My fate will never be manipulated by others." Jiang Tian roared and slashed out with his sword again. The immortal emperor's eyes remained calm, as if he was looking at a lowly ant baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. "Kong Taichu, do you know that I gave them the heaven-severing sword? Otherwise, how could those people from Zhongli have the ability to use the heavenly art?" Suddenly, the undying emperor snorted coldly and moved again. He turned his palm into a fist and raised it up high. Purple energy gushed out and 9 heavenly lightnings surrounded it as he smashed down heavily towards Jiang Tian. Crack! The heaven-severing sword shattered into countless pieces, and the purple thunderbolts kept running around it. Jiang Tian spat out a mouthful of blood as he was knocked flying. However, he burst out laughing. His body continued to break into pieces. He said in a frenzied and unyielding tone, "Old fart, if you dare to take her away, I'm going to destroy your sect, the Hengyu Immortal Sect, the 9 heavens, and behead you." Kang Teichu, stop it. It's not that I can't kill you, but I've shown mercy several times. I didn't kill you because Zhao Xueqing's heart of cultivation is flawless. Secondly, I saw that you have a good foundation, and it's not easy to cultivate. You're still useful. The Immortal Emperor's eyes were cold and indifferent. I can spare your life, but destroying the worlds of the solar system and the Southgate planet region is just a matter of command. Do you really want to try? The next moment, the great path of the deity realm was strangled. Suddenly, a terrifying sound that shook the entire sky was heard. That was the last sound of a planet and a world. Everyone saw that there was suddenly a sun in the sky. Its light was blazing and the light of destruction was extremely dazzling. The temperature on the side of the earth that was facing the fire suddenly rose, and the trees were scorched and even caught fire. The heavenly world is destroyed. Countless people exclaimed. Such ruthlessness and venom. He destroyed a planet and killed billions of people with a word. How can he be a giant in the deity realm? Especially Lucifer, Yi Xiaoman and the others who came to watch the ceremony. They were stunned and tears of blood rolled down their cheeks. Many people pounded the ground and cried. The size of the heavenly world was equivalent to Earth before the Spirit Qi revival. After several years of development, it was now very prosperous with a population of 1 billion. But now, all of them had been destroyed and turned into fireballs. But the next moment, everyone was enveloped by a deep sense of fear and felt cold from head to toe. The Immortal Emperor was able to destroy the Big Dipper planet region in 7 moves with 9 steps. If he wanted to destroy the solar system, he would only need 1 move. The destruction of the heavenly world was just the beginning. Kang Teichu, you are useful, so I won't kill you. But if you dare to continue to pester me, Earth will be next. Its historical mission has been completed. It doesn't matter whether it stays or not. The Immortal Emperor said coldly. His tone was very calm, as if he was talking about something normal. Are you really going to ignore the heavenly world for your own personal feelings? At this moment, all of the people on Earth and the extraterrestrial cultivators looked at Jiang Tian nervously. Some people were even filled with hatred and shouted crazily. Is Kang Teichu going to ignore our lives and destroy the solar system to fight the Immortal Emperor to the death? How selfish. Kang Teichu, why are you so stubborn? Could it be that your so-called freedom are so important? He took your lover away, not you. Is that so? If you dare to kill him, I'll let the Hengyu Celestial Sect and all the planets under its jurisdiction, and even your followers in the deity realm of the 9 heavens, and even the deities and Buddhas, die with the people on Earth. There was no joy or sorrow in Jiang Tian's eyes, as if he was hanging high up in the sky. The Immortal Emperor thought that he could threaten him, but he didn't know that he was the Taichu Celestial Lord, the god of Hongmeng. How could he be threatened? Even if the sun was destroyed, the earth would be destroyed, and billions of people would be turned into dust. Jiang Tian would not take a step back. Chapter 1813. Tisk Tsk. Before this, I always felt that your temperament was not compatible with your skills. You are like an adult mortal, but you have the innocence of a child. But at this moment, you have some of the demeanor of a reincarnation of a mighty figure. The common people are just ants. Why should you care about their lives? The immortal monarch praised slightly, but he was too lazy to say anything more. He seemed to be waiting for Jiang Tian to come again, and then he would raise his hand to destroy the sun and the earth. Just when the entire earth, and even all the worlds in the solar system were in despair. Suddenly, Zhao Xueqing's doppelganger knelt down in front of Jiang Tian and said tearfully, Jiang Tian, stop. I know you are not weaker than anyone in your life, but stop. Stop. Jiang Tian stood in the void and said in a daze, You want me to stop? Yes, stop. Zhao Xueqing was full of heartache, longing and struggle, but she still said, You said that the strong fight for the weak. This is our home, the place that we have always protected. Once, we were willing to die for this home. How can you and I abandon them? I've let you down. I've given in. Originally, the god's self-destruction was her last threat, but she found that under the immortal monarch's vast and surging power of the immortal world, even the smallest factor in her body was controlled, and she could not self-destruct at all. In other words, her last trump card could not be revealed at all. Moreover, Zhao Xueqing's doppelganger thought and consciousness were the same as the original. Although as tough as a rock and not inferior to men, she had the heart of a strong person, and dared to draw her sword even in the face of the Big Dipper extraterrestrial enemy. But after all, she was kind and compassionate. She did not want to sit by and watch the immortal monarch destroy the entire homeland and plunge the people into misery and suffering. But, Qing'er, once you are taken away by him, you will fall into his trap and will never be able to rise again. Ha ha ha, you can't escape from the mercy of fate. Jiang Tian's 7 orifices were bleeding, and tears of blood were rolling down his face. However, he was laughing, and his laughter was getting louder and louder. He was on the verge of collapse, on the verge of insanity. He was grieving for the heavens and the earth, and his fury and hatred were overflowing. We still have time. We can still fight. We can still defy the heavens and change our fate. We can exchange time for space. We can still break free from this eternal chess game and turn from chess pieces into chess players. Zhao Xueqing revealed a sad smile. She seemed to be comforting and encouraging him. She said softly, But once Earth is destroyed, even if you are the god of Hongmeng and the Daoyuo Tao ancestor, you will not be able to reverse time and space. We will regret it for the rest of our lives. Look back, look at your daughter, look at your family. Jiang Tian turned around and saw his daughter, Jiang Beibei, in the depths of Tianqing School. She looked like a porcelain doll carved from jade. She was looking at the sky with tears in her eyes. Grandma, is Mom going to be taken away? I don't want Mommy to leave. I want to be hugged and kissed by her. Mom is just traveling with this old man. Just like when I went to the ruins of immortality, I will return. Zhang Wanqing comforted her with a teary smile. At that moment, Jiang Tian's will to fight slowly disappeared. He lowered his head and remained silent for a long time. His black hair fell like a waterfall and covered his face, making it impossible to see his expression. However, everyone saw drops of tears that contained God's blood dripping down from his long hair like dazzling gems, drifting in the air. He was crying. At that moment, the divine infant was crying blood, and the connection between heaven and earth was affecting the laws of the world. The people were crying and the earth was mourning. The wind was blowing, the clouds were surging, thunder was exploding and rain was pouring. Countless humans felt heavy and depressed. They didn't know why they were in pain. They beat their chests and sang loudly. Countless monsters roared at the sky, as if they were going to break the earth and tear the sky apart, surpassing the world and ascending to the heavens. Nascent soul cultivators were formed by the laws of the world. Every nascent soul cultivator had imprinted their own laws in the world of stars. When they died, the world would also feel it. It was like the death of the heavens' sun. But many nascent soul cultivators didn't receive such treatment when they died, because their cultivation arts were incomplete. But Jiang Tian was a divine-grade nascent soul cultivator. He was like the descendant of a true god. No matter where he went, he would be recognized by heaven and earth. At that moment, there was great sadness and anger in his heart. Zhao Xueqing turned around and knelt on the ground. She said, Senior, I'm willing to be your disciple and comprehend the laws of the world, but there are a few conditions. Please allow me, Master. Haha, little girl, you're not stupid. You finally understand. The immortal monarch stood with his hands behind his back. He was overjoyed and laughed. First, I will only love Kong Techu in my life. No matter how many talents there are in the Central Galaxy and the Hengyu Celestial Sect, I will never change my mind, and will never choose another cultivation partner. I hope Master can grant my wish, Zhao Xueqing said firmly. I promise you. With my protection, no one in the deity realm would dare to bully you, let alone the central galaxy, the immortal monarch said without hesitation. His words were full of arrogance and dominance. A day together as husband and wife means endless devotion for the rest of your life. Although I can focus on the path of cultivation and cut off the sorrows with my sword, I still hope that you can give my husband a spaceship of the highest level without any worries, so that he will have a chance to cross the sea of stars and travel in the universe to pursue his own path. Zhao Xueqing said again. The immortal monarch's eyes flashed as if he were calculating. He hesitated and said, Okay, as long as you're willing to focus on cultivation and live up to my expectations, I will lend her a helping hand. Finally, Senior, you have to ensure the safety of the Jiang family and our homeland in the Milky Way. The graveyards of the deities and demons are already unstable. You have to ensure the stability of these stars, Zhao Xueqing said. Okay, that's easy. I can resolve everything with a few pointers. I'll say that the Tianqing school will be the leader of the entire Earth. Earth will be the core of the entire little Tiannan galaxy. No one will dare to invade it. The immortal monarch nodded and then asked, What else? Is there anything else? That's all. Zhao Xueqing stood up and retreated behind the immortal monarch. Kong Teichu, cultivate well. The immortal monarch nodded and looked calmly at Jiang Tian. He waved his right hand and a boat flew out from under his sleeve and landed in front of Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian lowered his head and said nothing. No one could see his expression clearly. No one knew what he was thinking. Don't be discouraged. You will be reunited one day, and you will also kill the Hengyu celestial sect. I'll be waiting for you. Then, the immortal monarch seemed to be comforting, encouraging and provoking. He waved his hand and the myriad stone cauldron and the sky-crushing sword were as good as new. The cracks disappeared and they flew to Jiang Tian. Only some purple chi and true thunder of the deity world of 9 heavens were left, but their dermic powers were not affected. Yes, you have to wait. Jiang Tian slowly looked up and said in a low voice. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. They saw that Jiang Tian's eyes had turned scarlet because of the congested blood. They were like a demon or a god, containing a frightening fighting spirit, hatred and anger. The immortal monarch nodded with a half-smile and looked calmly at Jiang Tian. Suddenly he disappeared. The flashing true thunder of the 9th heavens around him, and Zhao Xueqing behind him all disappeared into thin air. The dense purple gas dissipated. Zhao Xueqing's doppelganger didn't even have time to look back at Jiang Tian. At this moment, Jiang Tian and his beloved wife were really separated by endless galaxies, billions of light years. One was on this side of the starry sky, the other was on the other side of the starry sky. Even with Jiang Tian's current cultivation, he might not be able to reach this distance even if he flew for 1,000 or even 10,000 years. Even with the boat left behind by the immortal monarch, it would take at least 100 years to reach the Hengyu celestial sect. Mom! Jiang Beibei's cries of despair and reluctance rang out behind Jiang Tian. Chapter 1814. Jiang Tian slowly turned around and walked into the depths of Tianqing School, as if he were a zombie whose soul had been taken away. His eyes were scarlet and bloodshot, but he seemed to be in a daze. There were not many fluctuations in his emotions. With every step he took, he coughed up a mouthful of blood. In the end, his clothes were dyed red and he looked like a man made of blood. There were many cracks on his divine body, which was said to be indestructible. The spirit embryo in his body was in a mess and the divine infant shook violently, almost collapsing. Many divine chains came out of the sky and locked onto Jiang Tian, locking the 9 orifices divine infant. There were even terrifying Dharma laws in the world, suppressing the Dharma power in Jiang Tian's body. Meanwhile, Jiang Tian's power kept dropping from the 5th level of the nascent soul level to the 1st level. His nascent soul was even about to collapse. And yet, ancestral patriarch Shisha, Saint Ampo and the other grand cultivators who had come to watch the ceremony looked at him in awe and bowed to show the highest respect. All the other cultivators on earth knelt on the ground and worshipped him. That was the first time Jiang Tian had really lost since he became a cultivator. However, It wasn't shameful for him to be defeated by a giant of the deity realm. Instead, it made people respect him. Nobody else would dare to face a giant of the deity realm. Not even the supreme saints of the central galaxy, or the Tao reunion perfected immortals. They wouldn't even be able to withstand an attack from the immortal lord, and would die instantly. Jiang Tian was only a nascent soul cultivator, but he had withstood several attacks from a giant of the deity realm. Even though the immortal lord didn't really want to kill him, he was still unbelievably powerful. Master. Heavenly Arch. Senior. Tang Linglong, by Wuxia, Long Xingnan. Qi Liqui and Ao Jiao all burst into tears when they saw Jiang Tian stumbling and seriously injured. Don't worry about me. Jiang Tian raised his hand and stopped them. He said with a trembling voice, Everyone, let's go to the disaster area. Yes. All the disciples of the Tianqing school, the cultivators of the deity land and the cultivators from other planets looked at Jiang Tian with concern, then left for other places around the world. They threw themselves into disaster relief. Jiang Tian walked step by step into the depths of Tianqing school. Jiang Beibei ran over and threw herself into Jiang Tian's arms. She cried, Daddy, Mommy was snatched away? Don't worry. Jiang Tian squatted down and gently stroked her hair. He said softly, One day, I will bring you across the endless starry sky and stand in front of her again. Jiang Tian, how do you feel? The whole family came over to ask about it. Their eyes were filled with concern, and their eyes were filled with tears. I need to go into seclusion for a while. Jiang Tian waved his hand and went into the depths of Tianqing school. Then he fell to the ground. After a long time, Jiang Tian opened his eyes and immediately meditated with his legs crossed. He took out the god fragments and blood mist he had obtained during the battle with the cultivators of the Big Dipper sect. He absorbed them and refined them to restore his power. My divine body is broken, my divine infant is shaken, my spirit embryo is cracked and my divine laws are suppressed by the laws of heaven. I've been severely injured this time. But the immortal monarch didn't kill me. The deity realm purple chi and the true thunder of the 9 heavens he used can even nourish me. I'll take this opportunity to break them and build them up. I'll break these jars and be completely reborn. Jiang Tian thought to himself. Jiang Tian's divine body, divine infant and divine laws were the most powerful in the universe. There was no room for improvement. However, in Jiang Tian's memory, there was an extremely ethereal and legendary state where the divine body, divine infant and divine laws were completely combined. Once that was achieved, the 3 flowers at one's prominence and the 5 energies at one's origin would be called the ultimate level of the divine infant. Even the children of true gods couldn't compare. Jiang Tian had wanted to merge them before, but he had never achieved it. After all, he had cultivated all 3 powers to the phenomenal success level. It was too risky to cultivate from scratch. If he failed, the loss would be irreversible. Although I've lost a lot of energy and my power has dropped after fighting with the immortal monarch this time, it's a good thing for me. I'll take this opportunity to merge the 3 powers of essence, chi and spirit to lay the most solid foundation for advancing into the soul formation level in the future. Jiang Tian made up his mind. The boat he left behind is a quasi-deity artifact. It can help me cross the sea of stars. No matter what the immortal monarch is up to, Qing'er's power is still too low. I won't be able to meet his requirements for at least 500 years. During this time, Qing'er will be safe. 500 years. It wasn't a long time, but it wasn't short either. For some grand masters in the deity world who sat and watched the changes of the galaxy and the sea, 500 years was just a matter of closing their eyes and taking a nap, stabilizing their realm and refining their dharma spells and divine powers. Some grand cultivators who liked to watch dharma spells from their palms could take 1,000 or even 10,000 years. But for a universe with turbulent times, 500 years was too long. In the 500 years Jiang Tian had been in, the universe had changed magnificently. Many overlords and geniuses had appeared in the central galaxy. One after another, the Tao reunion overlords looked down on the world. Even Jiang Tian, the Taichu celestial lord who had the potential to go through the heavenly tribulation, had appeared. 500 years is enough for me to ascend to the deity world and compete with the immortal monarch. Jiang Tian's eyes were deep and distant. His battle intent was hidden. He looked up at the sky. His gaze seemed to pass through layers of voids, endless arrays, endless galaxies, reaching the central galaxy, and billions of planes. It was as if he could see the supreme world shrouded in endless celestial light that suppressed everything. There were some things and some grudges that Jiang Tian still had to settle with some people even after being reborn for 10,000 years. So what if he was above the 9 heavens? It wasn't like he hadn't fought with him before. Just like that, Jiang Tian closed his eyes and supported his broken body, starting to recover his power, and even going further. Even though he was suppressed by layers of Dharma laws, and his body was broken at the moment. However, the mysterious technique that Jiang Tian cultivated was truly too terrifying. Every one of them was the most powerful in the universe. As he inhaled and exhaled, a huge amount of vital qi, laws, great daras, as well as the treasures, blood essences, and spirits of gods used to fight against the Big Dipper silently gathered like a funnel with Jiang Tian as the center. The spirit qi on earth was rich at the moment, the Dharma laws were strengthened and the grand daras were stable. It was the best place for Jiang Tian to cultivate. The gains from the battle with the Big Dipper were as vast as the sea and couldn't be measured by a car. In the end, even the purple qi and true thunder of the deity world from the immortal monarch were gradually absorbed and refined. Whoosh! The cracks on the surface of Jiang Tian's divine body were quickly healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. His chaotic power, which almost fell out of the nascent soul level, was also slowly and steadily recovering at this moment. Level 1 of the nascent soul level, Level 2, Level 3, Level 3, night fell and a cool breeze came, bringing a hint of coolness. The moonlight shone on Jiang Tian from between the clouds. The sun rose, the sunlight gilding Jiang Tian with a layer of gold. His expression was calm and firm. Even though his Dao robes were tattered, there was a trace of otherworldly aura, as if he was a true immortal of the immortal world, eternally unmoving. The rain fell, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Jiang Tian was still sitting there without moving. He didn't even use his Dharma power to create a shield. He let the rain fall, wetting his hair and clothes almost in the blink of an eye. He was getting close to nature, feeling the world and merging with the grand Daos. Yellow leaves fell and rolled in the air, slowly falling on Jiang Tian's shoulder. Day after day, night after night, wind and rain, Jiang Tian always sat there without moving. He closed his eyes tightly, did not eat or drink, did not care about anything, and cultivated silently like an ascetic monk. He was like a statue, or even like a living corpse. Moss grew on his clothes, but his body and aura did not seem to have changed at all. Every 3 months, Tang Linglong and Jiang Beibei would come hand in hand, and quietly cut off his crazily long beard and sticky hair for him. They would also wipe his dusty and dirty cheeks. However, he did not dare to mention the matter of bathing and changing clothes to Jiang Tian. As for other mundane matters, he did not even dare to mention them. Occasionally, a disciple would come to the door and look at him with concern, but after kowtowing 3 times and 9 times, they would leave silently, afraid that they would disturb his seclusion. After waiting for 3 years, Jiang Tian finally opened his eyes for the first time. Chapter 18:15. After cultivating for 3 years, I've finally refined the energy of the soul formation cultivators and the half-saints of the Baidu sect, as well as the purple qi and true thunder left by the undying the arch. Not only have I recovered to the mid-stage nascent soul level, but I've also reached the peak stage of the nascent soul level. Jiang Tian's eyes revealed a trace of depth as he sighed in his heart. For normal people, it was only 3 years, but for Jiang Tian, who had been accelerated by the time acceleration array disk, it was actually equivalent to 30 years. This was the longest period of seclusion since Jiang Tian was reborn, and it was also the period of seclusion with the greatest harvest. Jiang Tian looked at the nascent soul level with sadness and joy in his eyes. The sad thing was that he realized, just like what Saint Ampo had said, the higher level of the nascent soul level required more energy to continue advancing. Even though the essence qi on earth had been restored and the Dharma laws and grand Daos had been strengthened, It wasn't enough to support his future cultivation. Jiang Tian had to go to the Star Ocean and the Central Galaxy, so he had to bid farewell to his family and friends. The happy thing was that not only had his power recovered, but it had also improved greatly. His spirit embryo was extremely heavy right then, as if it were made of gold. It was gradually turning into a divine treasure palace. The nascent soul was also extremely strong, like a baby growing into a young man. It wasn't far from becoming a god. Rise! Jiang Tian's eyes became deep, as if he were an ancient god who had created the world. He suddenly yelled. Above his head, the clouds and mist actually condensed into 3 huge flowers that shot straight into the 9 heavens. Of the 3 flowers, one was pitch black like a black hole, one was 5-colored, and one was flickering with golden light. They all took form and rose higher and higher. Every single one of them was 50 kilometers wide, like a huge cloud. This is Ancestral Patriarch Shisha, Saint Ampo and the heavenly generals of the heavenly courts were dumbfounded after seeing this. Ancestral Patriarch Shisha, Saint Ampo and the other cultivators from other planets were allowed to stay on Earth because of their contributions after the battle of the Baidu sect and the arrival of the Undying Arch. The spirit chi on Earth had recovered further. The essence chi and the Dharma laws on Earth were much denser than 3 years ago. It was prosperous and had become the cultivation's sacred ground of the entire Little Tiannan planet region. Countless soul formation grand cultivators and nascent soul cultivators from the Star Ocean arrived. However, it was different from when the Big Dipper cultivators aggressively besieged Earth and wanted to take over its nest. These cultivators were all very humble and well-behaved. Moreover, they had to register at the Interstellar Immigration Bureau and obtain a temporary residence certificate. They also had to establish meritorious deeds, slay demons and devils, participate in construction, or pass down their skills and preach the Tao. Only after obtaining enough points would they be able to obtain a renewal and achieve long-term residence. 3 flowers at one's prominence. My God, it was rumored that only returned to void stage great sages, and even Tao integration stage true immortals would be able to manifest this phenomenon. Why would it appear above Tai Chu's head? Could it be that he has reached the void return stage, or even the soul formation stage? Ancestor Shisha's demonic vertical pupils suddenly shrank, and her expression changed. No, Grand Primordium is still a nascent soul cultivator, but he's already at the peak of the nascent soul stage. Saint Ampo was so excited that his entire body trembled. According to the ancient records, the 3 flowers at one's prominence doesn't only appear during the Void Return Saints and Tao Reunion Perfected Immortals breakthroughs. It can also appear during the nascent soul and soul formation stage, but it's extremely rare. In essence, the 3 flowers at one's prominence is the ultimate flower formed when the Dharma power, body and divine soul power are gathered to the extreme. It means that Tai Chu's energy has already reached the peak, and he can't go any further. He's already at the limit of his current level. The old man has also seen such records before, but he thought it was too illusory. I never thought that Senior Tai Chu would have reached such a level. Another grand cultivator from the Star Ocean said in shock. After the discussion of the grand cultivators from the Star Ocean, everyone finally understood that the 3 flowers at one's prominence were also called the flower of the end and flower of the peak. It meant that the cultivator who formed the flower was already standing at the peak of a level, the top of the mountain, and there was no more path ahead. Cultivators who had stepped into this realm were also known as the strongest. Theoretically speaking, the golden core level was the strongest golden core level, and the nascent soul level was the strongest nascent soul level. However, there were only a few nascent soul cultivators in the entire Tiannan planet region, or even the entire universe who had formed the 3 flowers. Even if there would only be one. It could be the divine soul, the body or the Dharma power. Even in the central galaxy, there might not be more than a few people like Jiang Tian, who had gathered all 3 flowers at the same time. I've formed the 3 flowers at one's prominence, which means that I've reached the peak of the golden core level. The next step is to form a divine treasure with my spirit embryo, and form a god. I can't go any further, Jiang Tian said. Continuing to cultivate right then wouldn't be of much use to Jiang Tian. He would only be able to strengthen his body and refine his Dharma power. He would only be able to increase the quantity. There wouldn't be any change in quality. When cultivators in the universe reach this level, they would either try to break through or create powerful Dharma treasures and divine powers to protect themselves. They would also study all kinds of arrays and make pills. As he spoke, he stood up and the vines on his legs were gently torn apart. With a wave of his hand, he cast out a dust-dispelling talisman. His entire body was clean and flawless. His ragged clothes were torn apart as he changed into a clean robe and slowly walked out. Congratulations, Tai Chu. You've formed the 3 flowers at one's prominence and reached the peak stage of the nascent soul level. You're only a step away from the soul formation level. Congratulations to Senior Tai Chu for his profound magic power, long life, and forever shaking the sea of stars. Master. Your Majesty, you're out. When Jiang Tian walked out from the depths of the sect, the new Heavenly Court's heavenly generals, the Heavenly Clear Sect cultivators, and even the extraterrestrial powerhouses bowed deeply and kowtowed 3 times and 9 times. When Tang Linglong and the other female disciples saw that Jiang Tian was in high spirits and had recovered to his original state, they were so moved that they shed tears. Jiang Tian nodded and released his immortal will. It immediately covered half of the earth and many images appeared in his mind. Meanwhile, August 9, 2021 AD. It had been 3 years since Jiang Tian defeated the Big Dipper coalition army. In these 3 years, earth-shaking changes had taken place on Earth. It could be said that there were new changes every day. Swish, swish. Many flying ships flew across the sky. Those flying ships were dozens of feet long and there were many types of them, such as begonia leaves, tigers and leopards, giant beasts and shuttles. They were also powered by different powers. Most of them were driven by controllable nuclear fusion, or the power of talisman arrays. The 2 different powers of technology and immortal spells were miraculously blended together. 3 years ago, controllable nuclear fusion technology was only limited to the military, but it had already been widely used in the civilian world. In the world, the spirit chi was getting richer, and the Dharma laws were denser. It had already reached the level of the Big Dipper planet region, or even higher. Even many old people who weren't suitable for cultivation had started to practice fitness arts at the moment. They practiced in parks, dojos and suburbs. Their punches were extremely powerful. It was estimated that the average lifespan of a human would reach 200 years. There were even more geniuses on Earth in the past 3 years. Juniors like Tang Linglong, Sasaki Haisha, Shen Mange, and Martial Demon Nyang had all stepped into the mid-stage of nascent soul realm. After counting, there were already several hundred nascent soul realm heavenly monarchs. Besides, there were thousands of nascent soul cultivators, and over 100 soul formation cultivators. It was much more prosperous than the Big Dipper planet when it was at its peak. Dad, you're finally out. Jiang Bebe ran over. She was short and 2 of her front teeth were missing, but she was smiling brightly. She pulled Jiang Tian's sleeve and asked him to hug her. I have a daughter who has just grown up. Jiang Tian beamed and picked up the little girl. After his cultivation, Jiang Tian spent the next few days with his family. He played chess with his grandpa and traveled with his daughter to relax and enjoy his family. On this day, Jiang Tian looked at Jiang Chongqing and the rest of his family and said with a smile, Grandpa, Dad, Mom, for the next few days, I want to walk around and take a look. Go. Zhang Wanqing's eyes suddenly turned red. She knew that Jiang Tian was probably saying goodbye to his family and friends on Earth. After that, he might go to the Star Ocean and the Central Galaxy to find Zhao Xueqing. Chapter 1816. Knowing that Jiang Tian was going on a trip, Tang Linglong held Jiang Bei's hand and hurried over. She smiled and said, Master, you must take Bei and me with you on this trip. Never mind. I just want to be alone. You don't have to be involved. Jiang Tian was wearing a simple azure outfit, like an ancient scholar. He chuckled and said, according to the age of this life, Jiang Tian was already in his 30s, but he had lived 2 lives, so he had experienced a lot. Because of the departure of Zhao Xueqing's clone, he had become more gloomy and had a different kind of charm. Master, During your seclusion this time, you've achieved 3 flowers at one's prominence and 5 cheese unification. You've cultivated to the peak of the nascent soul stage, and are only 1 step away from the soul formation stage. You've gained a lot. You should be happy, right? Jiang Tian touched Jiang Beibei's head with a gentle look. He walked in the forest with one hand behind his back, and the other hand holding Jiang Beibei's hand. He smiled and said, "I'd be lying if I said I wasn't happy. She's the most powerful nascent soul cultivator in the universe. No one in the central galaxy, the deity realm and the divine realm can compare to her. More importantly, I'm only 1 step away from reaching the soul formation level and laying a solid foundation." His smile gradually disappeared and his eyes became gloomy again. Tang Linglong held Jiang Beibei's other hand and smiled gently. "Is it because of the arrival of the immortal monarch?" Jiang Tian took a deep breath and said, "The immortal monarch of the immortal monarch world is the immortal monarch. The great powers of the world of immortals have set this up since time immemorial. They used the entire lesser heavenly south as their chessboard, the galaxies as their borders, and the corpses of immortals and demons as their pawns. However, the most important pawn in this game is your masteress. We're entangled in karma, and it's heavier than the chains of the great path. I even suspect that there's someone even more powerful behind the scenes, someone like the Buddha Lord or the Tao Ancestor. All these years, I swept through the dimensional world, went on expeditions to the ruins of immortality, fought the Big Dipper, and even faced my previous life's master, the undying sovereign. One after another, they came one after another, pressuring me to the point where I couldn't breathe." Jiang Tian's face showed a hint of sadness and exhaustion. He said bitterly, "In the past decade, I've been blessed with great fortune. Although I've gained a lot, much more than the average soul formation cultivators, the immortal monarch didn't kill me. That means everything is under his control. Let me always have a kind of feeling that I can't break free from the shackles. Everything I've gained has instead become like a wedding dress for someone else. It's beyond my control, like a bubble in a dream that can be lost at any time." When he heard his master bare his heart to him, his eyes were filled with deep affection, regret, and gentleness. In a gentle voice he said, "The number of Dian is 50, but 49 are used. One of them is missing from the way of heaven. It's the only way to survive in a desperate situation. Master, you're entangled in karma and the powerful figures in the immortal world are coveting you. Only by working hard, moving forward firmly, and walking your own path can you grasp this slim chance of survival. This path is very tiring and bitter. But after all, you're the reincarnation of the god of Hongmeng. Your Taoist heart is as firm as a rock. You have great perseverance and divine sense, and you're also determined to die. Your current feelings of exhaustion, emptiness, sadness, and depression are only temporary. You'll definitely be able to walk out of here." She suddenly bowed deeply, her eyes narrowed into beautiful crescents. She smiled mischievously, revealing a rarely seen feminine side, and said, "This disciple was rash. I actually dared to show off my slight skill in front of Master. All of this, Master has crossed bridges in his life, and has walked thousands of times more than I have. He understands it better than I do. Master, you've just finished your closed-door training. What you need is rest, relaxation, and to forget all these troubles for the time being. Once this is over, you'll definitely be able to reinvigorate yourself and regain your fighting spirit." She suddenly pulled out the red blazing bone sword, pointed it at the sky and shouted, "Look, those gods and Buddhas are using us as pawns and manipulating our lives. Shall we kill them?" Jiang Tian looked at her silently, feeling both amused and warm. It was like a rich man with hundreds of millions of assets suddenly losing $1 million. But he was comforted by a poor friend who was sincere. But Jiang Tian didn't say anything. During his closed-door training, he had thought too much and vaguely understood the true purpose of the immortal emperor's many schemes. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was difficult to escape the fate of being a pawn. At this time his Taoist heart was lax, and nothing he said would be driven by emotions. His fighting spirit would also be empty and weak. Jiang Tian nodded and said with a smile, "You're right. In fact, there's a recognized rule in the cultivation world of the central galaxy. If you want to become a god, You have to become immortal first. So not only do I have to say goodbye to my old friends this time, but I also have to relax my body and mind while saying goodbye. I want to experience the world, understand the heavenly laws, meet old friends, talk about the past and forget those troubles. This trip may take 3 days, 3 years or 30 years, until I shake off the burden in my heart, regain my Taoist heart and have the courage to go straight to the Star Ocean. I know Master won't take me with him when he leaves. That's why I'm asking you to let me accompany him this time, Tang Linglong said with a smile. That's right, Jiang Tian said frankly. Your masteress is far away from the Star Ocean and must be worried about me every day. I'll feel guilty if I take you with me. What do you mean? You're guilty, Tang Linglong said with a mischievous smile. Masteress is generous and open-minded. She's never suspicious. I've never had any animosity or resentment towards you because I accompanied you. This guilt of yours is entirely because of yourself. If you don't have any feelings for me, why would you feel guilty? Well, Jiang Tian was stunned. He had been avoiding these women for a long time, but now that he thought about it carefully, he felt that it was more complicated than it could be. He was indeed a simple person when it came to relationships. In his previous life, although he flirted with women everywhere when he was young, it was not true. He was like a naughty child playing around. However, after Zhao Xueqing's death, he regretted it all his life and felt guilty. After he followed his master to the central galaxy, although many fairies and saintesses pursued him, he had never been tempted, let alone become Taoist companions. After his rebirth, he also kept himself clean. He waved his sword to cut off the strands of love, and kept a distance from many women. Therefore, although he was good at cultivation, he could not understand the word love. He only knew that he loved Zhao Xueqing deeply. At this time, Tang Linglong's question really stumped him. Fortunately, Tang Linglong had been in seclusion for several years and comprehended the great Tao. She was also much more clear-headed when it came to relationships. She was indifferent and did not linger. She quickly changed the topic and said with a smile, "Then Master, let's go." Okay. Jiang Tian nodded and thought for a while. He clapped and said with a smile, "The East Sea is the place where you and I met. Let's go to Linzhou first." Okay. Tang Linglong nodded and said with a smile, "Just like the ancient sages, I have not entered the house 3 times. In the 3 years since I returned to Earth, I have been to disaster relief everywhere and have never set foot in the East Sea." Wuxia Linzhou, Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing's old villa was crowded with tourists, and it was bustling with life. Dear passengers, the important scenic spot we are about to arrive at is the former residence of the master of Tianqing School, the leader of the Myth Alliance, the spiritual leader of the Earth Defense Alliance, the great helmsman of the Spirit Qi Revival, the great pioneer of the new era of the cultivation civilization, the great commander of the anti-Beta siege, the new master of the heavenly court, the Taichu Emperor, the strongest overlord in the Little Tiannan Star region, the first Divine Lord Kong Taichu's former residence in the East Sea. The tour guide holding a red flag seemed to be showing off her skills. She recited a series of titles without hesitation, which made the surrounding tourists applaud and cheer. Okay. We can finally visit the former residence of the Taichu Divine Lord. In the crowd, Jiang Tian was wearing ordinary casual clothes and holding Jiang Beibei's hand. He looked like an ordinary middle-aged man hiding in the city. He looked at them with a smile. Suddenly his eyes turned red. Chapter 1817. That was the place where he and Zhao Xueqing got married, and where his dream began. But now even the King's Mansion No. 1 on Lion Peak had been renovated and turned into a tourist attraction. The Taichu History Museum was built in Linzhou. Thousands of people came to visit every day. At this time, in the courtyard of the villa, there was a bronze statue of Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing holding hands. In the display window and on the table, there was a display of Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing's life, as well as many battle records. The holographic projection was playing many promotional videos. "Dad, is this where you and Mom lived?" Jiang Beibei looked around curiously and asked. Jiang Tian held her little hand, and walked into the living room like an ordinary person, hiding among the tourists. Seeing the things he thought of her and sighed with emotion. I'm just a rich kid. I'm as stupid as a cow and as hot-tempered as a tiger. I didn't accomplish anything, but I had a bad temper. But your mom never despised me. I was crazy back then. And your mom had to work hard. She had to stay up late every day and take care of me. He stroked the 29-inch TV with a big belly and said with a smile. But she never complained. She worked hard all the time to make life a little better, even if it was just a little better. Because her father was too poor at the time. She bought the TV outside from a flea market. Technology is developing rapidly now. Holographic projection and VR technology are all used. This kind of old TV can really be considered an antique. Then a manager walked over and bowed. Sir, this is a relic. You can't touch it. Oh, I'm sorry. Jiang Tian smiled and took back his hand. Jiang no, Taichu Divine Lord, you're here. The administrator's face was full of surprise, as if he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. What? The Taichu Divine Lord is here. Are you serious? Isn't the Taichu Divine Lord in seclusion? Why is he here? This shout startled everyone. For a time, the tourists surrounded Jiang Tian so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. They all bowed to Jiang Tian, their faces filled with admiration. Yes. Let me have a look. Jiang Tian cupped his hands and said with a warm expression. Sorry to disturb everyone. Not at all. What are you talking about? It's our honor to meet the Taichu Divine Lord. Grand Primordium Divine Lord, take your time. We'll back off. Everyone said hurriedly. Jiang Tian was transcendent and otherworldly. In the eyes of the crowd, he was like a god. In the eyes of the crowd, perhaps giving him some peace was the greatest respect. However, at this time, a beautiful figure walked against the flow of people and quickly walked over. She said excitedly, Jiang Tian, it's you. The woman was in her 30s, but she had maintained herself very well. She looked like a 28-year-old girl, but her pair of clear, beautiful eyes revealed a bit of depth and firmness, which added a bit of a different kind of charm to her. The nameplate on her chest also revealed her identity. She was the curator of the Kong Teichu archive in Linzhou. Lu Yiting. Jiang Tian smiled warmly and said, How did you become a curator? Don't you care about your natural beauty? How did you become a curator? Lu Yiting was wearing a black business suit. Her slender legs were wrapped in thin black stockings and high heels, but she still looked smart and capable. She looked at Jiang Tian excitedly, and her eyes were slightly red. She smiled and said, Natural beauty is already dead. Why do you mention this? Dead. Jiang Tian was slightly stunned. However, he immediately understood. With the recovery of spirit qi and the prosperity of the cultivation civilization, the lifespan of human beings could be doubled. As long as mortals practice breathing techniques, they would not age. It was normal for natural beauty to be abandoned by the times. Yes. To be exact, I took the initiative to close the business. Lu Yiting smiled and said, However, I seem to have been reborn. I talk to Shenlu and Zhengli here every day, or tell the tourists about your deeds. I'm very happy. Is this Bebe? She's so cute. She looks exactly like her. Lu Yiting squatted down and hugged Jiang Bebe with a face full of affection. Hello, Auntie Yiting. Jiang Bebe said sweetly. The business you valued the most is dead, but you've been reborn? Interesting. Jiang Tian smiled and seemed to understand something. It's not easy for you to come back. Go and have a look. Lu Yiting suddenly remembered that Zhao Xueqing had been taken away by the immortal monarch for 3 years. She could imagine Jiang Tian's mood. She said with slightly red eyes, Don't worry. I've asked people to close the shop. No one will disturb you. She winked at Tang Linglong and the two quietly left. It was on this sofa that I rewrote the prescription of the muscle-nourishing ointment. Your mother thought that I didn't know anything, and was writing nonsense to ruin her plans. She wanted to pinch my ear. Jiang Tian pulled his daughter to sit on the old sofa in the living room. His eyes were full of tenderness as he smiled and said, However, this is not the original sofa. To put it nicely, your mother is thrifty and diligent. To put it bluntly, She is stingy and haggles over every penny. Life was difficult at that time. After your mother and I moved to the King No. 1 villa, she rented this villa to someone else. I guess that family thought the sofa was shabby, so they replaced it. Your Auntie Yuting probably found the original photo and found someone to make a similar model. However, the design is exquisite. It's exactly the same. She even made it look old with care. Even the holes made by the cigarette are exactly the same. Dad, you're so annoying. Since it's exactly the same, it's the original. Why do you think so much? Jiang Beibei couldn't sit still. She ran around and suddenly turned back and said, "Since it's exactly the same, it's the original?" The childish and naive words flashed through Jiang Tian's mind like a bolt of lightning, illuminating a corner of the fog. Of course. Since it's exactly the same, of course it's the original. Even if it's not the same, it's still the original, Jiang Beibei said seriously. Dad, I heard Uncle Dahe talk to me about cultivation. Mortals are just mortal bodies. The foundation elixir is the life of true essence. The bodies of nascent soul and soul formation cultivators can be formed by laws. The old monsters of void return can even live in the void and become one with heaven and earth. Dad, you've changed a lot from a mortal to a nascent soul cultivator, but you're still you. Haha, Beibei, you're good. You can teach me now. Jiang Tian laughed heartily. With a gratified expression, he said unhurriedly, not only will the objective existence change over a long period of time, but even the consciousness and thoughts will undergo earth-shaking changes. But I can tell you that I'm still your father. You can answer this question, but you may not answer the next question. Let me tell you a funny story. Auntie Linglong read it to me before I went to bed last night. Jiang Beibei put her hands behind her back and said softly, there is a ship called the Ship of Theseus, which can sail on the sea for hundreds of years. This is attributed to the fact that it has a lot of spare parts and can be repaired and replaced continuously. As long as a piece of wood rots, it will be replaced, and so on until all the functional parts are no longer the original ones. The question is the ship that was created in the end still the original Ship of Theseus, or is it a completely different ship? If it's not the original ship, then at what point is it no longer the original ship? If we use the old parts of the Ship of Theseus and directly build a new ship, then which of the two ships is the real Ship of Theseus? What an interesting story. That's right. Is it still that ship? Which of the two ships is the real Ship of Theseus? Jiang Tian listened with a smile, but his face was as calm as a lake, and his heart was like thunder. Lightning once again shone through the fog. Chapter 1818. Dad, don't underestimate me. Kids these days are very knowledgeable. Jiang Beibei put her hands behind her back and said, let's not talk about cultivation. Let's not talk about cultivators. Even for mortals, according to the research of scientists, the cells in the human body only need 200 days to die. However, humans won't die because they can constantly regenerate their cells. This is equivalent to saying that after 20 days, this mortal is no longer the same as the original mortal from a physiological point of view. But isn't he the original him? She looked at Jiang Tian motionlessly, as if waiting for Jiang Tian's answer. He is. Jiang Tian nodded. But why do you think it's a new boat and not an old one? This is a new sofa and not an old one. In essence, it's a change of composition. Those tourists don't know the inside story, so they think it's an old sofa. Many people were taking photos here just now, Jiang Beibei argued. Jiang Tian was shocked. Lightning flashed again and illuminated the fog. I understand now. I finally understand. He looked up at the 9 heavens and his eyes gradually deepened. His gaze was as sharp as a sword. Zhao Xueqing wasn't used by the immortal lord to seal the 10,000 orifices demonic infant. Her body and the 10,000 orifices demonic infant were born together with Star Destroyer. No wonder Zhao Xueqing's birth was so strange. Her mother didn't have any sexual activity and suddenly got pregnant. The 10,000 orifices demonic infant needs 13 umbilical cords, but Zhao Xueqing also needs 13 umbilical cords when she was pregnant with Jiang Beibei. Star Destroyer is just a simulation of the womb of a woman with the immortal body of the immortal phoenix. It's like two parts combined to form a Zhao Xueqing with the 10,000 orifices demonic infant. She bears the karma on behalf of a certain supreme being. Ordinary people fear karma and mighty people fear karma. Even Buddha and Tao ancestor who have thousands of Tao in one body is also karma. The more karma one had, the greater the calamity one would suffer. It would be difficult to transcend and live forever. Only by severing karma or allowing another to take his place would he be able to transcend the Taos of the three dimensions and truly attain immortality without cause or effect, without life or death, without beginning or end. And Zhao Xueqing is the substitute of this mighty person, the Nirmanakya. For Tao integration perfected immortals, 3,000 years would be spring, 3,000 years would be autumn, and 10,000 years would be a single spring and autumn. However, when their lifespan was exhausted, they would return to the heavens. The Hongming god had created a world and formed a universe. How terrifying was his power! However, the universe was still not eternal. It was rumored that at the peak of the Big Bang, everything in the world would turn into a soup of particles. Everything would be in a state of chaos before returning to the singularity. This Hongming god would also be implicated by his own world's great Tao and return to dust. This black hand is truly a supreme almighty. Jiang Tian suddenly sighed, and his mood became even more gloomy. Although he had heard of this realm before, even when he ascended to Hongmeng, he did not dare to covet it. Do you understand? Are you scared? You should have understood long ago. You should have been scared long ago. Suddenly, a strange laughter sounded. It was as ear-piercing as the cry of an old crow. Jiang Beibei also saw it. A strange person suddenly appeared next to Jiang Tian like a ghost. He trembled slightly and lowered his head to laugh. His hair and beard were long and messy, and they intertwined with each other to cover his face. Only a pair of eyes filled with confusion and fear could be seen. He looked at the blue and clear sky in a daze. Dad, this strange person. Jiang Beibei was so frightened that she stumbled back and sat on the ground. Her small mouth cracked open and tears rolled down. Why are you crying? I'm your dad too. The strange old man glared at Jiang Beibei fiercely. Beibei, don't be afraid. Jiang Tian got up and hugged Jiang Beibei in his arms. He smiled and comforted her softly. This is Dad's dead self. It's my life's memory and experience. You can also see it as an external manifestation of my immortal will. He revealed his true self to talk to me and solve my problems together. Haha, I'm indeed the fear and worry in his heart. I'm the desire and worry in his heart. I'm the anger and hatred in his heart. I'm the bestial and demonic thoughts in his heart. But it's hard to control. If I go crazy, I won't even recognize my own family and kill you. The strange person suddenly turned his head and glared fiercely at Jiang Beibei with his turbid eyes. He bared his teeth and threatened her mischievously. Jiang Beibei realized that the strange person looked very similar to her dad, and was so fierce. She couldn't help but cry out in fear. Dad has become old and ugly. Tang Linglong and Lu Yiting heard the commotion and rushed in. When they saw this strange scene, they were so frightened that they turned pale. I can't do anything to you. I can crush you to pieces now or suppress you in my heart. Don't mess around anymore. Jiang Tian's true body berated. Haha, my heart aches for scaring my daughter. After all, she's my flesh and blood. I'm just playing. Why are you so nervous? He suddenly saw Lu Yiting and Tang Linglong. His eyes were burning with greed. He laughed and said, My lord, these two girls are so smooth and they're interested in you. Why don't you accept them? You're just pretending. Take them all into your harem. Let's do more exercise tonight. Lu Yiting blushed and looked at Tang Linglong in surprise. Where did this strange person come from? Why does he look so similar to Jiang Tian? In the cultivation world, it's called passing self. It corresponds to ego and Tao ego. According to my teacher, when one is in the transcendent mortal stage and experiences the mortal world, demonic thoughts will appear. Tang Linglong said softly. Lu Yiting was puzzled. She had little contact with cultivation. Not many people on earth knew that the transcendent mortal stage was a step before reaching the deity transformation stage. Tang Linglong scratched her head, thought for a while and said, You don't understand cultivation. But you can understand it as the ID, ego, and superego in philosophy. The ID is the combination of all kinds of instinctive impulses and evil thoughts in Jiang Tian's heart. It doesn't understand the law of morality and blindly pursues satisfaction without caring about anything. Oh, I understand. It's like multiple personality disorder, but Jiang Tian can show it. But it turns out that Jiang Tian also has thoughts about us. Lu Yiting was very interested. She giggled and blushed, revealing a touch of charm. Who doesn't have dirty thoughts in their heart? He's not a god. You're so beautiful. How can he not have any thoughts about you? Tang Linglong smiled and said, however, the old saying is right. Obscenity is not about the heart, but about the heart. No one is perfect. This is an instinct. At least with my teacher's current cultivation, he can't see through it. It's just that my teacher has deep feelings for Sister Qinger, so he can suppress it. The reason why I'm showing my past self now is not because of love and to get rid of my inner demons. It should be related to the ancient arrangements of the mighty figures of the celestial world. To be careful, I need to look at my heart and soul to see through everything. Tisk tsk tsk. You two little girls are smiling so beautifully and shamelessly. Why don't we have fun together tonight? The vanishing self-freak stood up, his eyes burning with passion. That's enough. Jiang Tian blushed and shouted. The strange man jumped 3 feet high and said angrily, what are you shouting for? Can't you enjoy yourself after fighting for a lifetime? Continue playing and dancing. At this time, another figure suddenly appeared. He was wearing a Taoist robe, and was as handsome as a god. He was bathed in immortal light and divine light, exuding a sacred aura like that of an immortal Buddha. He stepped forward and stepped on the strange man. He flicked his sleeves and said coldly, evil creature, you only think about dirty things all day. If you continue to pester me, I'll stomp you to death. At this time, Jiang Tian's true self, and past self appeared at the same time. One was open and aboveboard, like a god or a Buddha, as emotionless as the great Tao. The other was simple and unadorned, lingering in the mortal world, but cold and restrained. The other was timid, wretched, and impulsive, but there was a bit of affection and cuteness. Chapter 18-19. Dawa, spare me, I won't do it again. I won't do it again. The eccentric was trembling in fear, but he didn't forget to wink at Lu Yiting and Su Qianxi. He was so naughty and wretched that the two girls didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That Dawa only appeared for a brief moment, and after suppressing the strange man, it instantly turned into specks of light that filled the air and disappeared. Lu Yiting saw that the eccentric seemed to be more honest. She smiled and said, I've asked Shen Lu and his wife to have dinner together tonight. Okay. Jiang Tian nodded slightly, and went out with the eccentric. In order to let Jiang Tian meet more acquaintances, they chose the restaurant of an old friend. This old friend was Sister Li, the widow of an anti-narcotics police officer. Back then, she used to help Jiang Tian's family. After Jiang Tian became famous, he also helped her deal with Yi Wudao's son, Yi Ji, who kept harassing her. In the end, when he fought with Yi Tianren, he also uprooted Yi Wudao's entire family. He also bought a piece of land for Sister Li. Sister Li worked with other businessmen and developed this place into a food street, including her own restaurant. Elder Sister Li had prepared a private room for Jiang Tian. Right now, she was living a very happy life and was very grateful to Jiang Tian. Her son had grown up and was also a police officer, but he had already cultivated and was a qi refinement expert. He even specially rushed over to offer Jiang Tian a toast. This made Jiang Tian feel a faint sense of gratification, and he sighed ruefully. Shen Lu and his wife's son could already learn to walk, and he looked just like Shen Lu. Although Shen Li's shares in many consortiums were almost all plundered when the monsters wreaked havoc on the earth, and he was now only a middle-level person, he was still very satisfied with everything in front of him. This was a very happy family. Being with these simple people, Jiang Tian felt that he had never been so calm since he was reborn. Memories came to his mind. These memories belonged to his previous life, when he hadn't been taken away by the immortal monarch and set foot in the central galaxy. At that time, The stars in the sky were just theoretical stars in his eyes. They didn't know how prosperous the cultivation civilization was there, and how deep and terrifying the sea of stars was. In his previous life, Jiang Tian was like an ignorant child. For the next few days, Xin Lu and his wife accompanied Jiang Tian to play in Linzhou. On this day, Tang Linglong received a call saying that Mr. Tang Guozhu was critically ill and was on his deathbed. Jiang Tian, Tang Linglong, and their daughter went to visit the Tang family. Tang Guozhu was already very old. Although he had taken a lot of elixirs over the years, it was still difficult to beat fate. He was already on the verge of death. Of course, with Jiang Tian's mana, he could still prolong his life if he forcefully used it. However, Tang Guozhu did not allow Jiang Tian to do so. My physical body has already decayed. Even if I forcefully extend it, I won't be able to last long. I'll have to trouble teacher Jiang to do it again. Let's just leave it to fate. Tang Guozhu was very open-minded. He held Jiang Tian's hand and said softly. Now the 6 paths of reincarnation had been established. Yi Tianren was in charge of the reincarnation of Yin souls. Those who had meritorious deeds, even if they died, had a chance to continue their consciousness. They could either enter the underworld and become a ghost cultivator's messenger of death, or they could be received by the messenger of death and be reincarnated. Sure enough, Jiang Tian saw a ghost cultivator's messenger of death. He was already waiting in the ward. However, he was a ghost cultivator and his mana was not bad. If he wasn't a cultivator like Jiang Tian, ordinary people wouldn't be able to see him. At the moment when Tang Guozhu's physical body died, the ghost cultivator's messenger of death used a magic tool to hook Tang Guozhu's soul. He came to a paper boat and carefully nourished it with the magic tool. Then he sat on the paper boat and crossed the sky with him. About 10 minutes later, in the delivery room of Linzhou's First People's Hospital, there was a loud and clear cry of a baby. The family immediately cheered. When the baby was carried out by the nurse, they all scrambled to surround him. This family was a rich family. Moreover, they had already embarked on the path of cultivation. In such a family, if it wasn't for the fact that the baby's fate was full of misfortune, he shouldn't have suffered too much. The baby looked around curiously. Although his eyes were very pure, there was actually a trace of age in them. However, this age quickly passed away, and he once again became confused and ignorant. He's finally gone. Jiang Tian retracted his gaze and sighed softly. Tang Guozhu was once a giant. He had made contributions in both the military and the martial arts world. Yi Tianren and the messengers of death of the underworld wanted to help him reincarnate. They used their mana to nourish him and deliberately protect the memories of his previous life. However, they still didn't succeed. At least, they didn't succeed completely. Jiang Tian rebuilt the underworld and reconstructed the reincarnation cycle in order to use the experiences and memories of the deceased's previous life. However, this 6 paths of reincarnation was, after all, man-made. There were still various loopholes and flaws. The success rate was less than 1%. At this moment, there was only a very faint wisp of remnant soul in the baby's mind. Furthermore, as his memories grew, his past memories might very well be completely suppressed and vanish into thin air. What is life and what is death? Hearing the sorrowful cries of the Tang family, recalling Tang Guozhu's life, and hearing the joyous chatter of the newborn family, full of anticipation for the baby's future, Jiang Tian sighed softly. Was the baby now another Tang Guozhu? I think it's unfair to that child. The strange man revealed a disdainful expression and snorted coldly. He was originally a brand new life. Why did you forcibly inject the memories of an old man into him? Fortunately, although he is a branch, when the old tree dies in the future, he will be a new tree. Kong Teichu, you are not a mighty figure, but you want to imitate the actions of a mighty figure. You want to manipulate the fate of others and use their lives as chess pieces. Isn't that the pot calling the kettle black? What is life? What is death? Jiang Tian sighed again, as if comprehending. It's very simple. The eccentric scratched his dirty scalp. Suddenly he pointed at a puddle under his feet and said, "It's raining heavily today. The rainwater is life, but when it enters this puddle, it becomes stagnant water. But is the water really dead? It will turn into clouds and become rain again in the future. This cycle repeats. But you can't say that the rain in the future is today's rain. Lightning once again lit up in Jiang Tian's heart when he heard the words of the vanishing self, eccentric. Moreover, this lightning was even brighter and longer lasting than before. Clusters of fog regarding the comprehension of life and death were completely illuminated. Jiang Tian's heart suddenly became bright. At this moment, he had almost succeeded in becoming immortal. His understanding of the mortal world and the great Tao of life and death had reached a very deep level. It could be said that if he wanted to enter the soul formation realm, the success rate would be at least 50%. However, he still didn't stop comprehending. Instead, he continued to experience the mortal world and the great Tao. Holding his daughter's hand, he strolled in Linzhou with the eccentric, enjoying the rare peace without any impatience. The strange man who suddenly disappeared pointed at a huge strange tree and said, "That's right. Jiang Tian, look at that tree. What is a leaf? What is a branch? What is a stem? What is a root? Is that a tree or a forest?" That tree was a very common banyan tree in the Lingnan area. It was originally very old, and with the nourishment after the recovery of spiritual qi, it had grown especially large. There were countless branches on the branches, and many of the roots hung down to the ground and sank into the soil. Jiang Tian saw that the real trunk of the tree had been riddled with holes by lightning, sun, and insects. There was not much vitality. However, the new roots were vigorous and full of vitality. Some of them had even torn off the roots and vines of the old tree, and formed new independent trees. Yes. What is a leaf? What is a branch? What is a stem? What is a root? Is this a tree or a forest? Jiang Tian sighed. His eyes were shining. For the next few days, Jiang Tian and the eccentric sat under the tree to comprehend. They didn't meditate but stood and sat casually. It was very relaxing. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The heavy rain poured down. Jiang Tian and the eccentric were drenched, but they still stayed under the big banyan tree, unwilling to leave. "I have an answer. Whether it is the ship of Theseus, the cycle of life and death, or the primary and secondary branches, I have my own answer. Whether it is right or wrong, I have an answer." A few days later, Jiang Tian seemed to have understood something. His eyes were filled with joy, and he felt that his soul was much clearer. He got up, shook off the leaves on his body, chuckled, and walked into the distance. Chapter 1820. The prosperity of the mortal world, the fresh lives, the companions, the support of each other, all kinds of fun and leisure. This life belongs to us. No matter what happens in the future, we can't let the grand cultivators take it away or disturb our state of mind. That was how Jiang Tian felt. I have a sword in my hand and I can kill all the gods and Buddhas in the world. Suddenly, Jiang Tian felt an unprecedented fighting spirit surging in his heart, and he couldn't help but shout. At this moment, the last bit of doubt in his mind was also gone. His heart became lively again, as if the dust had been washed away. In the distance, Tang Linglong and Lu Yeting looked at each other and smiled. They seemed to have seen the old Jiang Tian come back. Then Jiang Tian started to prepare for his departure from Earth. This time, Jiang Tian only took his daughter and the black dog with him. The universe seemed to be safe, but it was actually extremely dangerous. Apart from the orderly cultivation planet regions, most of the places were still chaotic barren areas. Besides, there were also a lot of universe beasts that weren't tamed by humans, and were devouring energy and lives everywhere. Jiang Tian's trip this time had already gone beyond the Milky Way and several galaxies, which was much longer than the Beidou expedition to Earth. Such a long interstellar journey would be dangerous even for soul formation cultivators. Those cultivators would only be a burden. The black dog was a purebred purple-golden true dragon. Even though it was weak and timid at the moment, it could definitely resist. In fact, Fu Heishui and Fu Heishui also wanted to go to the central galaxy with Jiang Tian to find the mother bat to continue their lineage. However, ancestral patriarch Shisha of the Ophiuchus constellation told the two brothers that there was a divine bat clan in the Ophiuchus constellation. There wasn't a single male in the clan, and they had been living with the art of creation all these years. The two of them immediately ignored Jiang Tian and hurried there. Besides, many soul formation grand cultivators in the Little South Heaven planet region had also sent news that the immortal emperor had indeed fulfilled his promise. The graveyards of the deity fiends on all the planets had been adjusted and repaired. The violent planets like the third planet of the South Gate had also returned to normal. In the foreseeable future, the Little Southern Sky Star Zone would be the most stable and suitable place for cultivation in the entire Milky Way. It was even equivalent to the edge of the central galaxy. Under such circumstances, bringing Earth cultivators like Tang Linglong or the new heavenly court into the central galaxy was not worth it. Moreover, Earth had become the cultivation core of the entire Little Southern Heaven Grand Star Zone. The many starry sky spirit guiding arrays set up by the immortal emperor were running like eternal stars. Vast and surging spiritual energy was drawn from the third South Gate, the Ophiuchus constellation, and the immortal demon stellar graveyard in the Fomalhaut constellation, and continuously poured into Earth. The tide of spirit chi swept across the land, and the laws in Great Tao continued to strengthen, nourishing this awakening ancient planet. Jiang Tian believed that Earth's peak period had yet to come. The current Earth was like a toddler learning how to walk. It was far from growing into its prime, but he couldn't not bring his daughter along. She was the continuation of Zhao Xueqing's life, and also his caring little jacket. Since she was born, Jiang Tian had rarely been with her, which made Jiang Tian feel very guilty. When Jiang Tian left, it was already after the Spring Festival. Nobody saw him off, so as to avoid the sadness of separation. And in those few months, Jiang Tian had almost traveled all over the world, and said goodbye to everyone he needed to say goodbye to. The sound of firecrackers could be heard and the snow couldn't cover the lights. Jiang Tian had his hands behind his back and Jiang Beibei was riding a big black dog that looked like a pony, walking on the street of Sidoni together. There were pedestrians everywhere. Some were rushing to restaurants, while others were looking at the Dharma artifacts on the stalls on both sides of the street. The neon lights of the shops were reflected in the river, flowing slowly and bustling. People were coming and going. It was very lively. Jiang Tian was wearing a blue robe and a wooden hairpin. He walked slowly with his hands behind his back, looking around as if he had already blended in. Every day, Sidoni took in a huge amount of resources. Resources from countless planets came to Earth from all directions in the abandoned planet region, then went to other planets through Earth. There were many cultivators and nascent soul cultivators on Earth, as if they had returned to the era of overlords in the ancient times. Every step was a memory. Jiang Tian seemed to have returned to that time. He had fought side by side with Zhao Xueqing again and again, conquering and killing for this land. On the left, there were couples walking on the street, mothers holding their children's hands, young men and women hugging passionately under the blooming fireworks and gluttons looking for delicious food. They were so real and the mortal world was so real. Jiang Tian suddenly felt a bit reluctant. He also understood why Zhao Xueqing had decided to give in at the last moment and follow the immortal monarch. The mortals of this world loved delicious food, were passionate about life, chased after charm, calculated benefits, and thought about things. They had all kinds of emotions. They were not elegant and otherworldly. They were not like those so-called almighty giants whose hearts were as cold as iron and as steady as a rock. However, they lived like real people. This world was too beautiful. It was worth facing thousands of soldiers and horses, and it was also worth enduring humiliation and dragging out an ignoble existence. It would also become better in the future. That's strange. Since when did the abandoned planet region become so orderly? 3,000 years ago, I passed by the Ophiuchus region. The cultivators there would draw their swords at the slightest disagreement. There was no order to speak of. But when we went to the Ophiuchus region, they started to restrain the power and gradually formed a kingdom of cultivators. A middle-aged man in a blue Taoist robe stroked his beard as he looked around curiously. Yeah. The Milky Way is very far from the core of the universe. There's no civilization and order. It's always been called the abandoned planet region, and the graveyard of the deities and demons. It's isolated from the world. How did it become so prosperous? I heard that they're forming the Little Southern Sky Planet Region Federation group, with the solar system as the core. The entire Little Southern Sky Planet region will be peaceful forever, and communication and development will be the theme for a while. That's really rare. A girl in the prime of her youth spoke softly. She looked extremely charming and had a strange expression on her face. According to my investigation, a genius called Kong Taechu was born. Although he's a nascent soul cultivator, he has the power of a half-saint. He might be the reincarnation of a grand cultivator. Another young man in golden armor was apparently the core of the three. There seemed to be talismans flashing in his eyes as he spoke with a deep voice. What? Kong Taechu is so powerful. If our divine prince takes him in as a subordinate, won't we have another powerful general? The middle-aged man in a robe and the charming woman exclaimed together. Their eyes almost popped out in disbelief. They were masters from the Magpie Plume Planet province, under the Saint Origin world. They took super light-speed Dharma artifacts and even used wormholes. It took them 20 years to arrive on Earth. The Saint Origin world was located at the edge of the central galaxy and belonged to the core of the universe. It was a prosperous place with many geniuses and a few sacred-grade soul formation cultivators. However, they had never seen a monster with the power of a half-saint while being a nascent soul cultivator. While the three of them were talking, they didn't know that Jiang Tian had already walked past them with Jiang Beibei. Dad, I miss Grandpa and Grandma so much, Jiang Beibei said with tears in her eyes. Little master, don't cry. We'll be back when we become more powerful. Besides, the Black Jade Qilin will come and force me to be responsible for her. I'm so scared. The black-haired dog's words also contained a lot of information. Let's go. Jiang Tian looked back in the direction of the Tianqing school one last time. The next moment, a boat went straight into the Star Ocean. Destination: Saint Origin world in the central galaxy. Chapter 1821. In the lonely universe, the sky was filled with stars and a small boat was sailing. The black-haired dog sat at the end of the boat and looked at Earth. Suddenly he said pitifully, "Master, I'm suddenly so scared. Will there be any terrifying astral beasts?" "Well, Uncle Blackie, that's Mars, right? That's the ruins of deity, right? It's so vast. Awakens, right?" Jiang Beibei, on the other hand, was very excited. She held Jiang Tian's sleeve and pointed at the constellations in the sky, trying to identify them with interest. Yes, Bear is very accurate. A hint of tenderness flashed in Jiang Tian's eyes. The next moment, Jiang Tian took out the heaven-severing sword and gently swung it in the air like a paddle. Okay. In silence, the boat traveled through the endless void, passing many planets from Earth to the edge of the solar system in a blink. The journey of the Voyager, which used to be the crystallization of human aerospace technology, took decades to complete, but it only took a second for the boat to travel. Jiang Tian skipped a light year, or even a few light years every time he swam. Even the unsetting sun, which had the expertise of artifact forging and technology on Earth, would need dozens of days to travel from the solar system to the Southgate system. However, this time, it only took a few seconds for the boat to travel. Even the cultivators of the Big Dipper, who were the most advanced in space travel in the entire Little Tianan planet region, would be dumbfounded when they saw this speed. When they first traveled to Earth from the Big Dipper, it also took a few years for them to arrive. However, if Jiang Tian traveled from Earth to the Big Dipper, it would only take a few days. This terrifying speed had already surpassed that of a void-returned saint, and was comparable to a Tao reunion perfected immortal. In the Southgate system, Jiang Tian stopped for a while and slowly approached the third planet of the Southgate. The array there had indeed been adjusted by the immortal Arch. Layers of deity arrays locked the deity's body, and the 9-heaven deity seal kept suppressing and destroying it, turning the energy of the deity's body into spirit chi and dharma laws, which were then injected into Earth. "You're a man of your word." Jiang Tian had a faint smile on his face. No one knew what he was thinking. After that, Jiang Tian set off again. The boat carried Jiang Tian, and the others like a leaf floating across a clear lake. They flew silently across the universe, and arrived at the edge of the little South Heaven planet region in half a day. That speed was comparable to that of a Tao reunion perfected immortal. However, not even Tao reunion perfected immortals could do it as silently as Jiang Tian, without creating a dimension chaos hole, or tearing apart the laws of heaven and earth. On the one hand, it was thanks to the boat. More importantly, Jiang Tian had already attained the three flowers at one's prominence, and was a nascent soul that had perfected the limitless realm. The biggest difference between a nascent soul stage cultivator and a normal nascent soul stage cultivator is that they are like the children of gods that were born and raised by the universe. They are like the young masters of any place in this universe. No matter which star system one arrived in, they would instantly receive the recognition of the heavens and earth and obtain the support of their status. They would be able to naturally use the Dharma laws and Tao of this land, split the star ocean with a finger, and cross the world with a step. Not only would they not be affected by the outside world when it comes to using the power of the heavens and earth, they would also receive the help of the heavens and earth. Even void-returning saints and Tao reunion perfected immortals might not be able to compare to them. Jiang Tian felt the subtle feeling of the close connection between the nascent soul and the world as he rode. Right then, his nascent soul was like an engine that burned eternally. The essence chi and Dharma laws in the world were like endless energy that poured into the nascent soul. It didn't consume any of the nascent soul's Dharma power, and could still provide a terrifying amount of power for the boat. Mortals cultivated the outside world, while gods cultivated themselves. So the nascent soul stage cultivators and soul formation cultivators in the mortal world would naturally receive the recognition of the heavens and earth in their own world. They could do whatever they wanted and were omnipotent. However, once they arrived in other star systems, they would often run into difficulties. Even sacred-grade soul formation cultivators could use their power in other star systems. After all, the Dharma laws were similar to the Grand Tao, but they still needed time. For example, Han Ming had only mastered the Dharma laws and Grand Tao after 2 years at the entrance of Earth. And yet, even sacred-grade nascent soul cultivators and soul formation cultivators would immediately lose the power to control the world once they entered the fiend realm, the ghost realm, or the dimensional storms, where the Dharma laws and Grand Tao had changed drastically. They could only rely on their own true essence or the Dharma laws they had condensed, which greatly reduced their power. As for normal nascent soul cultivators and soul formation cultivators, they would even be destroyed by the Grand Tao laws when they arrived in such places. That was also the reason why the grand cultivators in the mortal world rarely went deep into the other worlds. After all, he was a grand cultivator who could do whatever he wanted in the mortal world. In the other worlds, even a few nascent soul cultivators of the alien races would be able to make him lose face. Soul formation cultivators especially. Most of them had their own divine regions, where their Dharma power was almost infinite and they were immortal. Even nascent soul cultivators would be useless. Not even a saint who was a level higher would be able to kill a soul formation cultivator in the divine regions easily. And yet, once they left the divine regions and lost the power of Dharma laws, the so-called soul formation cultivators would only be powerful nascent soul formation cultivators. Such soul formation cultivators would have a high risk of losing their lives. They might even lose their lives if they were careless and encountered a disaster or a powerful beast. They were almost like gods in their own territories, but they would have to risk their lives in the other worlds and lose most of their power and power. Which cultivator would be willing to take such a risk to explore the other worlds? Why would they feel uncomfortable? In fact, not only the other worlds, Jiang Tian knew about it. In many ancient chaos planets and forbidden lands, there were laws and Taoist rules that forbade the use of the natural energies and laws of the outside world. As a result, most cultivators would lose 90% of their power. There were also many such forbidden areas in the universe. So, the top sacred grounds and celestial sects made their disciples practice body-tempering arts, because they were afraid of falling into such a situation. The divine realm is obviously different. Nascent soul cultivators in the divine realm cultivate themselves. They combine their nascent soul, body and soul into one and develop their own world and universe. The Dharma power in their bodies will be endless without relying on external objects. So even if they enter the other worlds or forbidden lands with different Dharma laws, they won't lose too much of their power. That way, they can quickly integrate into the worlds with different Dharma laws and still maintain their powerful combat abilities. Just like those divine beasts and monster beasts who rely on their own bodies and divine powers. More importantly, the nascent soul cultivators in the divine realm cultivate their inner world and their own universe, which is prepared to become the Hongming divine fruit of creation one day. They have different starting points and different horizons. They see different things and pursue different Dharma fruits. Jiang Tian was full of emotions. He had only cultivated a sacred grade nascent soul in his previous life, not a divine grade one. He had slowly learned those things after he formed the chaotic 9 orifices divine infant. In addition, he had gone through a lot to reach the immortal state in Hongming in his previous life, and had a better understanding of the wonders of a divine grade nascent soul. His own Dharma laws were applicable everywhere, and he would be recognized by the world immediately. Cultivating himself and forming an inner world meant that he would never lose control of the Dharma laws, and he would always be invincible. Chapter 1822. In fact, even now, Jiang Tian could not figure out the immortal emperor's true attitude, whether he was an enemy or a friend. Moreover, even if he was an enemy, controlling the fate of Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing, he was not the real mastermind behind the scenes. He could only be regarded as a white glove of the supreme magnate. Whether he was forced to do it or did it on his own accord, and what kind of role he played, was still unclear. The real mastermind's strength and status had reached an unimaginable level. There were only a few dozen people who stood proudly at the top of the immortal world, or the divine realm. I'm also ridiculous. In front of tigers and wolves, I still consider the cause and effect for them. No matter who the mastermind is, no matter whether the immortal emperor was forced to do it or did it on his own accord, as long as he wants to control my fate, I will still unsheath my sword and cut through all obstacles. Jiang Tian's eyes were cold, and he decided not to think about it. After all, it was not time to unsheath his sword. Before that, the mastermind and the immortal emperor had to carefully cultivate Zhao Xueqing and would not hinder his progress. The most important thing now was to improve his cultivation as soon as possible, until he was qualified to turn against the supreme magnate and unsheath his sword. Over the next few months, Jiang Tian continued on his journey, passing through many large galaxies that were like the Milky Way. He kept on getting closer to the central galaxy. He saw along the way. He passed by huge cultivation stars and saw countless ancestors in old linen clothes with animal skins around their waists, like the ancient Wuxia, working hard on the earth, slashing and burning, planting spiritual fields for the cultivators above them. The seasons changed all year round, and the spiritual seeds that were planted with great difficulty were all cruelly taken away by the cultivators in charge before they could eat a bite. If there was resistance, they would often be beaten into ashes with a spell, just like slaves. He saw that in a poor mortal family, there was a person who was tested to have talent for cultivation, and was immediately taken in as a disciple by a cultivator of a higher sect. The entire family celebrated, and a banquet was held for the surrounding villages. They happily moved out of the cold, poor, and dangerous small village that they originally lived in, and moved into the city. They were no longer subject to the exorbitant taxes of the sect, and the attacks of low-level demon beasts. He saw high-level nascent soul stage cultivators, sitting on countless spiritual fields and mineral deposits. Their luxurious residences towered into the clouds, and countless beautiful maids in light gauze clothes shuttled back and forth in the palaces, living a life of debauchery and debauchery. Their magic power was still strong, but their divine souls had begun to fall and decay. Although they claimed to be immortals, were they immortals or devils? He saw that in the aristocratic families, for the sake of fighting for the power of the family, the sons of the first wife and the sons of concubines would cause trouble. They saw their brothers as enemies and killed each other until rivers of blood flowed. In the end, the son of a concubine who obtained the upper hand, killed his brother and father. He held the head in one hand and the family seal in the other. He raised his head to the sky and laughed complacently. It was as if what he killed was not his own family but a group of pigs and dogs, a nest of beasts. But there were also tears of blood rolling down his face. Was he despicable, or did he have his own difficulties and was just trying to survive? What kind of story was behind all of this? He saw most of the time Jiang Tian's face was expressionless. He just looked on coldly. He saw a beautiful girl from a poor family being bullied by a low-level cultivator. She was terrified and desperate, and only wanted to die. If his daughter didn't have the heart to let him attack, Jiang Tian would also casually strike down a bolt of lightning and shatter him into pieces. Countless other cultivators were shocked. Then, under the lead of an old Xiantian cultivator, they hurriedly bowed to the sky, begging for mercy, Senior. If Jiang Beibei couldn't bear to see the demon beasts harassing and attacking the city, he would also strike with his palm. His palm could destroy all life and destroy 1,000,000 miles. The golden light shone brightly, as if Buddha had slapped the five-finger mountain. The demon beasts naturally retreated in fear. The people in the city immediately cheered. Only the cultivators were frightened and didn't know what had happened. He passed by two countries fighting. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were surrounding and killing each other. The cultivators on both sides were also fighting with all kinds of Dharma treasures and immortal arts. The sky collapsed and the earth cracked. The water in the lake evaporated. Jiang Tian also stopped and watched with interest. It was as if he was watching an exciting movie. He saw how the commanders of the two sides racked their brains to think about each other's moves, and then came up with countermeasures. The immortal cultivators were in a killing frenzy. Even the high-level immortal cultivators did not hesitate to rummage through the treasures that they had accumulated over hundreds of years, and throw them all into the fray. The mortal kings on both sides sat in their royal palaces in a daze. They could only watch as their countries were smashed into pieces, and their people were plunged into misery and suffering. However, they were unable to resist at all. In the end, Jiang Tian couldn't stand it anymore. He slapped the cultivators on both sides into ashes and instantly stopped the war. Just like that, he walked and watched along the way. When he saw injustice, he would also help. Most of the time, he just flew past. The scenes he saw were not only on the planets he passed by, but also on the edge of the entire universe. High-level cultivators were rich. They sat on the wealth and power accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years, and had the power to kill. Civilians and low-level cultivators without cultivation could only fight with wild dogs for food and fierce demon beasts for a place to live. The civilizations of human beings were like a dark forest. Every civilization was the prey and the hunter, and it was their responsibility to destroy each other. Outside the central galaxy, the edge of the universe was the wilderness. Human beings fighting in the universe and killing each other crazily had experienced the era of great competition in the wilderness countless years ago. Jiang Tian had even seen it in many other worlds or the edge of the universe in his previous life. He was not surprised at all. On one hand, it was true that the universe was too vast. The edge of the universe and the slightly orderly central galaxy were like a chasm. The tentacles of the central galaxy couldn't reach anywhere. Without a powerful ruler, it was like a group of dragons without a leader. But on the other hand, these immortal cultivators themselves did not want to change. After all, they cultivated diligently, and no one really hoped that they could ascend to the immortal realm. Most of them just wanted to live longer and better lives, and this required a huge amount of cultivation resources. Those cultivators obviously thought that they could live better lives by oppressing the cultivators and mortals at the bottom. But Jiang Tian knew that the prosperity of a civilization required the rise of countless cultivators at the bottom. One day, the power at the bottom would gather into a tinder that would illuminate the dark forest of the universe. By then, swords and plows, iron and blood, and countless generations of people would have to sacrifice their lives and blood. However, only in blood and fire could a new civilization and order rise brilliantly. He was very glad that under his intentional or unintentional arrangements and guidance, Earth had been on the right path from the very beginning. Cultivators fought for mortals, The strong bathed in blood for the weak supported the strong, and the strong could also be born from the weak. A few months later, Jiang Tian arrived at the edge of the storm belt, around the central galaxy. He put away the boat, held his daughter's hand and landed on a planet with life called the Zhoma planet. Looking inside the planet, one could see a black stream of water across the sky, enveloping the entire area, as if it could tear the space apart at any time. What was more terrifying was that the black curtain seemed to be made of space fragments and endless black holes, but it was still flowing slowly as if it were alive. Once inside, it could send a soul formation grand cultivator, or even a planet to the depths of the unknown universe at any time. The storm belt was like a moat that surrounded and protected the eternal, dazzling Central Star River. Standing on the Zhoma planet and looking through the storm belt, Jiang Tian could already see a vast continent floating in the deep universe. The Saint Origin continent was in sight. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.